Yellowstone, the most popular show in America in recent years, but an enigma to many people. Similar to the MAGA movement, another phenomenon that has swept the nation, a lot of people can't make sense of it. Why was a show about cowboys and Western culture so popular in the 2010s and 2020s? How can a man completely unqualified by all objective measures win the presidency not once but twice and destroy an entire political party by bending it to his will? These two entities, a political movement and a TV series universe, have taken the country by storm. By implementing simplistic, comforting, and familiar ideas in the face of complex reality, both MAGA and Yellowstone have built a sense of security. And with the rise of hypercapitalism, outsourcing, general pushes towards valuing the supply side or business side economically, trickle-down economics, and conservative political ideologies, we have spawned a monster. One that seeks comfort in animal sensibilities, easy answers, and familiar solutions. One that sees life and the world as nothing but darkness and views everything unfamiliar as dangerous. And above all, this monster is one that brings no peace, no joy, and no comfort as it consumes humanity for never being good enough. These characteristics are true of both MAGA and the Yellowstone universe. Today, I want to explore these movements and better explain their characteristics, roots, and plans for the future. So, if you want to know why and how this is happening, if you want to understand what is destroying our country from the inside out, then stick around to learn more. Obvious spoiler alert. I don't think you'll need to watch the show to understand what I'm talking about here. I do summarize things, and watching all the series is a long and painful process. I wouldn't recommend it. There are more examples of what I'm discussing here in the shows. So if you want to watch it, you'll see more specifically the things I'm talking about that I didn't have space to put in here. But first, a quick disclaimer. I would have loved to make this into an actual video, but Paramount loves flagging videos for content violations. I would be doing a ton of work editing only to be flagged with a copyright strike. So this is a podcast, and my apologies if it is a bit dull, but as I will go on to explain, my life and the life of any work I create is meaningless to our corporate overlords. Even though they would benefit from my analysis as free advertising for their woefully failing platform, they would rather squeeze every nickel from their properties, effectively cutting off their nose to spite their face. I suppose we should be grateful. It lends itself to poetic proof of my point about how corporate culture is destroying our country. Yellowstone, the series that has swept the nation and skyrocketed its creator, Taylor Sheridan, to stardom. It seems to have brought the Wild West and Western culture back into the landscape in a very big way. Suddenly, every star is cutting a country album, and every streaming service is desperate to produce a neo-Western drama. Meanwhile, the creator of the series is putting out spin-off after spin-off, and a whole slate of new shows that seem to comprise most of Paramount's latest programming. Yet none of these shows or the copies of Yellowstone seem to be as influential or as relevant as the original was. People like to dismiss it as fluff, but at the end of the day, this series is successful because it is about the very real conflicts happening in our country right now. Even though it's been off the air for a while, its attitudes are still so relevant. Republicans and their petty vengeances, the warlike approach they have towards everything, the complete disregard for democracy and due process and the higher values of our laws, it all slots in perfectly, as you will soon see. Yellowstone and its spin-offs also showcase the lack of understanding among the wealthy elites and Democrats about what is driving the success of this program, and on a deeper level, it showcases why modern republicanism has been so successful. So today we're going to do a deep dive into both modern republicanism and the Yellowstone universe to explain why we are where we are today in our country for those who don't understand what is happening and why. Whether you believe it or not, this show perfectly encompasses modern Republican philosophy as well as the culture of sections of America right now. And I know that a TV program shouldn't have such sway, but culture happens from both the top down and the bottom up. So whether Sheridan is simply watching and reporting on the world of Midwestern America, or is actively influencing it with his ideology of reality that just happened to hit a cultural nerve, I don't know. It is most likely both scenarios. Art doesn't happen in a vacuum. I don't believe in a sinister cabal or shadow states. It's not some big secret. It's obvious what is happening. However, it is very clear that most people have no clue because there is such a focus on conspiracies and power. Disclaimer number 2. This is a long and stressful video. Please don't try to listen to it all in one sitting. It took me years to write this, and it is a doozy. It is a harsh and often demoralizing look at what is happening in our country under the surface. surface. Take breaks where you can and do things or watch things that make you happy in between. While it is important that you understand what is happening, it is also important that you live to fight another day. The central conflict of the series is a family fighting for their ranch against encroaching forces, of traditionalism fighting against progress, and it is happening in communities across the globe. For a variety of reasons, business has become deified, godlike, and government is business now as a result. There is no one protecting us. The structures of the world have become poisoned, and those who espouse the philosophy of Yellowstone would argue that the structured world was always poisonous, but that's just not true. The world is a complicated place, and we choose what philosophies and ideologies we espouse about it. No matter what MAGA likes to say, there is a philosophy even in right-wing thought. It's not just common sense. It may not be easy to pinpoint, but the world runs through various ways of thinking. And make no mistake, even something as simple as Yellowstone has philosophy, themes, karma, and a vision that has informed and created it. We're going to discuss its roots in historical America, as well as why no other Western movie or TV show seems to be able to recreate its success. Yellowstone challenges conventional knowledge in modern times, but it's not anything new or interesting. It's a rehashing of the Westerns that were popular in the middle of the 20th century, as well as old-school conservative ideas that were around for years before the cultural revolutions of the 60s. Nowadays, there is a sense that being old school is novel and rebellious, as we see with the return of misogyny, conservatism, war, and so many other things that are not novel at all. My intent in this video is not to demonize any one person or group, but rather to explain what is happening and why. I hope that you walk away with a deeper sense of context and understanding, whether you like the program or not. If I should offend anyone here, please know that is not my intent. I just want to give you a different perspective. Let this be a moment of pause in the endless ranting and raving of the modern world, a chance to understand, reflect, and think deeply about this moment in time. Because so much of our so-called discourse is nothing more than nonsense, and for this same reason, I'm going to limit as much of this conversation to just the philosophy and not the policy of what is happening. I would love to be able to talk about specific policies related to the Trump administration, but they aren't done with everything they're doing just yet. There are going to be more shifts in the country based on the visions of Trump and the MAGA movement. So consider this a Rosetta Stone, a reference to think of when reading the news and watching the policies that are yet to come. Hopefully this will offer you a deeper understanding of what is happening in our country right now as well. This is going to be a deep dive, so settle in, leave your preconceived notions about the American West at the door, and let's dive into the world of Yellowstone. So first, to explain the series, for those who don't know, a relatively quick summary. The Yellowstone series follows the Dutton family as they fight to keep their ranch, the largest in the country, against encroaching interests. The first series of this saga was Yellowstone, which started back in 2018. After that came 1883 and then 1923, each of the prequels which follows the family back in time. Whether Sheridan realizes it or not, he's picked times in history that are very similar to this current moment, times when wealthy people were breaking the world in half, causing ordinary folks to reach for independent means of earning a living, such as ranching. I've included a family tree in the video and a timestamp to it in the description in case this summary doesn't quite make sense, but the family tree is sort of incomplete because we don't really know who certain characters are just yet. But the family starts out small, with James and Margaret Dutton and their son John and their daughter Elsa, escaping poverty after the Civil War and moving west in a wagon train. James Dutton starts his ranch where he buries his daughter and eventually is buried himself along with his wife. 1923 starts with his brother Jacob and his wife Kara taking over the ranch. They raise Margaret and John's children, Spencer Dutton and John Dutton, and his son Jack. Each series tells the story of the Duttons and how the land they live on has shaped their family and legacy. And finally, in the latest iteration, Yellowstone, we have John Dutton, played by Kevin Costner, and his family. We meet the Dutton family in 2018, fighting to keep their ranch in the face of a land development deal run by business interests from California. At this time, John's children, Jamie, Beth, Lee, and Casey, are all split up. Casey is a horse trainer who lives with his Native American wife Monica on the Broken Rock Reservation with their son Tate. They were all raised on the ranch, and it's revealed early on that their mother died when they were young. There's also a group of cowboys that live on the property in the bunkhouse, led by Rip Wheeler, a young boy who John Dutton brought to work on the ranch after he escaped a violent family family situation. Beth has recently moved home to help her father with preserving the property. Lee, the eldest, runs the ranch, and Jamie is the property's lawyer. Now, we lose Lee in the first episode, so the story focuses more on the other three siblings. The stories in these shows are told out of order, but they are tied together with similar themes and characters. Throughout the series, the Duttons have done many immoral and illegal things to keep their property as it is, large, whole, and undisturbed by the outside world. The whole story is focused on the family, both building and then eventually struggling to keep the land. 1883 is marked by the challenges of the wagon train, trying to get out west, and eventually landing in Montana. 1923 is marked by the advent of the modern world, mining, electricity, modern appliances, running water, and indoor plumbing, and the development of urban centers, even in rural areas like Montana. James's brother Jacob expands the size of the ranch, but then it becomes about the challenges of holding onto it. The economic hardship brought on by drought leads to sheep herders encroaching upon the land and forces Jacob to become violent with enemies attempting to graze on his lands. So the shepherds align themselves with a wealthy businessman in an attempt to steal and carve up the ranch. Suffice to say, it doesn't go well for them. When we meet the Dutton family in 2018, they are fighting much more aggressive interests than just a singular businessman looking to enrich himself. At first, it's just local interests from California or within Montana looking to take pieces of the land, or the local native reservation looking to get back what was once theirs. These people are managed, especially when the final villain of the series rears its head. A large investment firm known as Market Equities and its expansive business interests are pushing their way into the valley at a rapid pace, seeking to buy the Dutton ranch rather than steal it, which highlights the central conflict of the show. The Duttons would rather stay on the ranch and try to make a living off of it as well as they can, rather than sell it off and go somewhere else, because their family history is tied to the land. Every Dutton who died on the ranch is buried there. Many who died defending the ranch or working on it. Memories, the connection to the past, to a sense of family and ancestry have been weakened in the family, especially after Beth, Casey, and Jamie's mother died in the 90s. So they hold on even more tightly because the land and their home is the only connection they have. It is also important that the land remains pristine and untouched as it is, because Market Equities, upon buying up the land, plans to develop it into a resort town with an airport. And so the Duttons fight, legally and illegally, morally and immorally, for their property and their freedom, for their right to live as they see fit. Some things are more important than money, and we are given a sense of what really matters beyond just the almighty dollar. Every child is involved in this fight in one way or another. For Beth, as a member of the financial sector, she's fighting by buying up land, making deals to destroy outside interests as they come in, generally being a shark. For Casey, he becomes the livestock commissioner, caring for other ranchers in the region, as well as regulating the industry and keeping it alive. With Rip, a ranch worker, but also an unofficially adopted child after he marries Beth, it's all about being a foot soldier, which means, aside from running the ranch after Lee's death, it's also about murdering people when necessary. For Jamie, while he is involved, it's about the legal end of things, handling the government and the law. For John Dutton, it's all about doing whatever is necessary, and by the end of it, becoming governor just to keep the promise he made to his father to keep the ranch. Eventually, Jamie, who learns that he was adopted, leaves the family and becomes an adversary. Jamie is the black sheep of the family. Often it seems he is punished for being a part of the structures of the world, like the government, and enjoying it. He believes the ranch should be sold and the land developed, as there is a great deal of generational wealth to be created from such a sale. His covetous nature is not completely benign, as he, in the interest of protecting the family's name and fortune, takes Beth to an abortion clinic on a native reservation, rather than in town, where he knowingly allows her to be sterilized alongside the procedure. By the end of Yellowstone, Jamie is the Attorney General of Montana, and unfortunately is being manipulated by an attorney for Market Equities into reinstating the development project that John managed to halt by becoming the governor. John is killed by Market Equities at the end of the series, and the family is forced to give up the land, unable to afford the taxes on it. In order to keep the land whole, Casey and Beth return it to the local native reservation, so that it is forever protected protected from outside interests. There have been many copycats attempting to emulate what Yellowstone has created, but nothing seems to land. I believe that this is because they cannot capture the kind of unhappiness that Yellowstone has managed to capture. People aren't satisfied with modern life. There are two big reasons for this case, something that many people in America cannot grasp. Logically speaking, the economy rebounded after COVID. The pandemic here was not as bad as it was in many other parts of the world. Civil rights protections have been steady, and things have been at a relatively even keel, even with disruptions like global war, the pandemic, and other issues. But life has no meaning. The modern world offers us a variety of things, but most of all, it offers us a deep level of hedonism, one that makes life meaningless. It's not even that everything we want is readily available, but the fact that that's all that matters, our desires and nothing else. The second reason for people's unhappiness is the proliferation of modern capitalism. This is something I discuss in my supply-side economics video, linked below if you're interested. It is so strong, and it completely devalues us. Ironically, something that was created by Reagan in the 80s, the same person who spread cowboy culture and rugged individualism, all things we will discuss here. If we choose to see the truth of our powerlessness, then we feel powerless. But if we choose to take on an individualistic, social Darwinist mindset, then by taking it on, by owning it, we feel powerful, even if we are not. Yellowstone captures the philosophy of America in the last few decades. In what Heather Cox Richardson from the newsletter Letters from an American calls supply-side economics. We have seen a cultural shift from valuing people to valuing capital. Business is so much more important than anything else now. This isn't just capitalism as it is an active choice that we and our ancestors have made starting in the 1980s, and today we are reaping the fruits of it. The three series that detail the stories of the Dutton family, 1883, 1923, and Yellowstone, all take place during moments of history when, like right now, supply-side economics are the culture of America. Times of the robber barons, the Great Gatsby kind of wealth, the moments of evil in American history where wealthy people have an excess of power and money. These times are both the problem and the solution to painful times like this. The philosophy of America right now and the philosophy of Yellowstone are in sync, accounting for the popularity of this series, but also very clearly explaining what is happening and what will happen from here on out should we choose to remain in this moment. That is to say, the culture of rugged individualism is the reason why we have a devaluing of human life, but it's also the way that we deal with the devaluing of human life, if that makes sense. The true roots and success of this story are in its subtle hatred of the wealthy and powerful. The more overt stories are about it, the more they are branded woke, communist, or some other right-wing term to disparage the truth of our reality. But Yellowstone is right-wing because it doesn't pitch an exact solution to this problem on a social level or use certain terms to talk about it. It's just social Darwinism and the law of the jungle. If you want some rich asshole to stay out of your town, then it's up to you to kick them out. Right-wing people watch this and enjoy it because they know full well no poor town in middle America has a family like the Duttons standing against unregulated capitalism. So while the villains of the series are always rich, powerful men, they aren't the problem. Man's nature is the problem. It's not something practical like politics, regulations, or taxes. The focus of these stories is on the land, culture, and world of Montana, but specifically drawing boundaries around it. What is and isn't of that place? What makes the heart of America, America? What makes people belong? The answer to that question is very simple. People who live and belong in Montana, in Middle America, are deeply connected to the land. So to understand Yellowstone, we must first understand America, because the land and the stories of these people are intimately tied together. The saga of the Duttons taps into the heart of a version of Middle America, a place that still feels wild and untamed, and it taps into the heart of certain Middle Americans, both how people are and how they live, as well as how they wish they could be. It's a powerful story that captures what America means to many people. These stories give depth to the American experience, to the stories that many of us were told about the history of America, beyond just facts and figures. America is only 250 years old, without many monuments or much history, but the land is so much older. It certainly really doesn't help that the original inhabitants, who were here for a much longer span of time than current Americans, have all but been wiped from existence. We are left with this sense of mystery when we gaze upon the land. From the average person who enjoys hiking and national parks to people who live with the land and work on it, it's hard not to feel that true history that is difficult to capture beyond just feelings. It is mystical and spiritual to walk through ancient forests and mountains, to gaze upon the land in awe of its age and majesty. No major scene in these series takes place in large urban centers or even suburbs. You are only introduced to the worlds that are still wild, raw, primal, and instinctual in nature. Here we harken back to the time of our ancestors, and even to the time before humans. On their first date, Spencer takes his fiancée Alex to see what he believes is the footprint of an ancient child in Africa. Excited by the age of what she has seen, she proclaims that she has never felt small before. Suddenly, she realizes now that her time here is nothing more than an eye blink. Spencer then explains to her that this shortage of time is why he proposed to her so quickly. And it's interesting, because while we discuss evolution from a purely factual place, we can also feel it. If you go to a place that is ancient, like Eastern Africa, one of the places where humans began to evolve into our current form, you can feel that history. You don't need to read Darwin to feel how old our planet is. Every vision of the land in these untouched places imparts the gravity of its age. These shows take us back in time, as far back as the founding of our country, and even further back to humanity's roots. They show us a time when the fragility of humanity in the face of nature and the power of our instinctual animal selves reigned supreme. Though in many ways this is a mythologized version of American settlers, it speaks to the desire that many Americans have even today to feel connected to the land. Sheridan shows how people still feel connected to this way of living, even with the rapidly modernizing world. And at the same time, he captures the discontent that many feel with the direction of our world. To fully understand the scale of this story, we must look back in time at the land itself and see how we as humans lived on it before the days of the Anthropocene. If you don't know what the Anthropocene is, it is a hotly contested time label given to our current time on Earth, a time in which humans have the most power and impact on the planet. There is so much history that we are connected to that most people have no clue about, and that is what Sheridan alludes to in these series. He seems to posit that while we might be the most powerful creatures on Earth right now, we will likely vanish the same way that every other creature who once dominated Earth did. And because of this, we must live for the moment and respect nature as God. In the time measurement of Earth's life, humanity is a mere blip, and human lives are even smaller. This fact means that humans are a part of the natural world. The best things are in the natural world, but it's also extremely dangerous. This planet is out to kill us. From large predators to small ones to other humans, we must be aware constantly. We could die at any moment, so we must make the most of every moment. A fact that drives every character's actions. It's why every wedding is a simple elopement, why characters don't hesitate to have relations with each other, despite the rules of purity for women that are relevant in the historical shows, and why many people end up dead in the blink of an eye. One shootout, one mistake, and that's it. Both from nature itself, whether it's a bear or a horse, or even the other characters. Humans are more animals than people in these worlds, and here, this is a good thing. The lack of quiet moments among humans lends an air of soapy drama, which keeps us hooked. It certainly helps that Sheridan takes his actors to every location possible for filming, from Africa to Montana, and insists that everyone participate in cowboy camp. The air of realism is immersive and compelling, but also dangerous. Nature is balanced and ancient, but it's not a very nice or safe place. Violence abounds throughout the natural world, and so through Yellowstone. In this world, it is everywhere, and in everyone, just like the natural world. Those who are a part of the natural world become animalistic, defending themselves and their kin as any animal would. Most of the country doesn't live that way, but they understand it. It's a key part of the mythos of America, that this land is out to get us, so violence has a place. As a result, America is a strangely violent place. Not not in the sense of war, but in violence like gun violence, gang violence, mafia violence. We didn't invent these things, but we certainly do have a lot of them. In Yellowstone, the Duttons kill anyone who threatens their ranch, to an excessive degree. Rip, Jamie, John, Casey, all the cowboys are involved in murdering enemies and usually dropping them at the train station, a rural canyon past the Montana border into Wyoming. Of course, it's not unwarranted, as Duttons themselves are targets on many occasions, nearly dying at the hands of their enemies throughout the series. It's pretty messed up, but this is Western justice, not the real world, and it certainly explains how John Dutton behaved in the first 2 seasons of Yellowstone. Man in nature is violent. He embraces that part of himself the way that man in nature is free. For those who can't understand why gun violence in the rest of the country doesn't yield legislation, I think it's more than just the gun lobby. Some people see violence as an inevitable part of human nature. Hopefully it's honorable, serving a purpose or greater good, such as the ranch or another life. But otherwise, it's just a fact of life. There are gratuitous levels of violence in this show, but in the beginning, at least, there is a weight to it. It's not willy-nilly Hollywood killing, it feels real. People are distraught after it happens. There is a morality, at least in the first few seasons of this show, that is divorced from religion and politics, something that comes from the soul. You know that when Rip kills Rourke, or one of the cowboys, or when Casey kills the Beck brothers, or the man in the meth lab on the reservation, there is a logic to it. When Casey's wife Monica kills a predator preying on native women as part of a sting operation, she is in agony afterwards. It's a reflection of how the land is harsh and death is necessary sometimes. There is never a sense of rightness to it, but more of a necessity to survive. They know what they're doing is wrong and they're not heroes. They're just trying to make it. There is a conversation about trying to balance morality with the instinctual desire to survive, to kill or be killed, but the balance usually tips towards killing no matter what. This is just the world they live in. It is a part of living with one's animalistic sensibilities rather than our higher natures. At least initially this was made clear, but over the series it seems to become more and more gratuitous and less of a necessity and a weight that they're carrying. This world is all about the natural cycles of the natural world that we are divorced from these days. It makes this series so compelling for most of America who work and live on artificial clocks. Ranchers especially participate in the rhythms of nature in the same way that animals do. Ranching life is connected to the seasons, but the cycles of nature are prevalent in the family. The women have children, the kids get married, and have more children, and older people die. The family unit is cyclical, just like nature and the animals they raise. In making these connections to our animal selves and our ancestors, Sheridan is connecting humans to the deepest parts of ourselves. This is a connection we are starving for these days. The expectation of modern society is that we live by the mind and not the body, even though we lived by the body for thousands of years. Seeing people who live purely by the body, perhaps to a level that is dangerous, is strangely comforting, because we cannot always be that way even when we want to be. And it reminds us that we are a part of the cycles of life and death. In the episode Blood the Boy, John makes it clear that to live is to kill. This is something that makes most of us uncomfortable, but it's natural. There's a kind of self-hatred these days that seems rampant, especially with eating meat. Rather than forgiving ourselves for being human and accepting the reality of life, we try to become creatures that need nothing. But to live is to kill, and to survive sometimes means hurting someone else. There is such a desire these days to deny our humanity, to become robots without the need to eat real food, to work without rest, without emotional needs such as love, community, or companionship, to become soulless creatures who have no need for anything so that we don't have to deal with the messiness of being alive. We lack the emotional tools to deal with that, so we try to strip it away from ourselves. Even the characters in Yellowstone lack the tools to deal with the messy parts of life. At least we all have that in common. At the very least, we must try to accept the messy parts of life, like death. In this world, older folks in the family die, but there is a legacy of women losing children as well. Whether it's Emma, Elizabeth, Beth, or Monica, there is loss and grief. They sit with it until it passes so they can move on. Nature doesn't run from death, and there is no fear of it. It's God's decision, and it's part of the price we pay for being a part of this beautiful and terrible world. Being divorced from these rhythms means being unaware of how large the universe is and how small we are. In the face of time, we are nothing. Our lives, our problems are tiny, and peeking into Sheridan's world where nature is everything shows us that. Whether we realize it or not, it calms Americans who have no proper history. It puts petty daily problems into context and makes them feel irrelevant. And Taylor Sheridan makes it clear that nature was here before we were, and it'll be here once we are gone. Humans may rule right now, but dinosaurs were once at the top too. And that is the conclusion of all of these shows, that we are here for a little while, and in the scope and vastness of the natural world, we are nothing. So we must live for the present. Perhaps that's why, as the series progresses, death and killing become less heavy, because we're only here for a little while anyways. Of course, we must be careful to not reject the role of man in the world right now. Nature may be what survives beyond us, but there is no doubt that we are destroying it right now. Sheridan clearly dislikes cities and human development, and you can't dislike those things without recognizing man's impact on everything right now, even if it may be fleeting in the future. Truly though, it seems much more likely that we will destroy ourselves first. The whole of these series is about loss and death, perhaps reflective of this moment in the world. Whether it's the family losing the whole ranch, or whether God wishes women to lose their babies, whether nature ends us all, the story of the Duttons is a story of mourning. It confronts directly the futility of human existence. It spurs us onto action on our dreams because our time here is so limited. It is why we must fight for the things that mean something to us, because we only get to live once. In these themes, we find the world of the Yellowstone Ranch. Bruised, battered, but surviving. It seems that, like wild animals, the only thing that matters out here is survival and continuance. These same ideas determine the direction and philosophy of the modern Republican Party and much of America these days. Upon deeper inspection, these themes are rooted in broader concepts that we will discuss next, such as Transcendentalism, Social Darwinism, Cowboy Culture, and more. America's ancestors came to know nature, because this land was not developed in the European sense when most Europeans came over. They had to build it up. Over years of destroying the natives and their populations, one of the most important philosophies/artistic movements born in America was Transcendentalism. Transcendentalism was a literary and artistic movement that came of age in the late 1800s to early 1900s. It was developed by a group of scholars and artists who were skeptical of industrialization and modernization. Transcendentalism was the first truly American artistic movement, and it was born of the land. Prominent writers and artists of this group consist of Emily Dickinson, Herman Melville, Walt Whitman, Henry David Thoreau, Ralph Waldo Emerson, and Nathaniel Hawthorne. Transcendentalism helped to shape the identity of America when it was a fledgling nation. It helped to create the American Preservation Movement and the National Parks System. Transcendentalism places an intense focus on nature and humans being a part of nature. Everything is connected and runs by a rhythm. Morality is an innate thing, not taught through church or determined by culture. There is also a focus on a simple life close to nature. Business interests and their money are seen as corrupting to nature and man. This distrust of money, people, and social structures eventually leads to a distrust of technology and cities. Anything that is artificial or invented by man. The movement of Transcendentalism was a response to Unitarianism. Rather than believing that logic and rationality were the best options, they believed that intuition, feeling, imagination, creativity, and action were better than reason, theory, and contemplation. This is a very important point. The history, facts, dates, they aren't accurate in the world of Yellowstone, but that doesn't matter because it's about the mythology of America. Because while some version of these stories may have happened, the actual history doesn't line up here. Whether it's Transcendentalism or something else, reality and facts aren't important. It's all about the feeling. This is something that many people miss about Americans. We are emotional people. To be an American is to enjoy a kind of freedom, a feeling that comes from the mythos of America rather than the reality of it. We may not all agree on the exact details of it, but that's because it is a feeling, not a fact. It is this sense that we are free to feel whatever we want and act accordingly. And the Duttons encompass this sense, this foolishness of being irrational and purely emotional. Even though she's English, Alexandra is the most interesting character in understanding this aspect of Transcendentalism because she runs away from a perfect life as an aristocrat. because it doesn't feel right to her. She makes a purely emotional decision in jumping into Spencer's car the day after her engagement party, but she never once regrets it. Not when their boat capsizes in the ocean and they nearly die of heat stroke, not even when they're nearly impaled by an elephant or eaten by lions and cheetahs, not even when they're split apart by her ex-fiance's classist father, and not even when she dies giving birth to her premature son. It is distinctly American to be stupid, to take your family cross-country in a wagon train, to duel with your wife's ex-fiance, to fight for a ranch that is steadily depreciating in value. It puts feelings above facts, but through it they learn responsibility for one's actions and growth from mistakes. Life and reality are not always perfect, but at least they can be ours. This sense of individual responsibility and mistakes are paramount to freedom itself, a key tenet of the Dutton philosophy. The ideas behind Transcendentalism were influenced by European thought, but the goal of its leaders was to create something authentically American. And it rings true as a philosophy based on the American landscape. America is built like no other place in the world. There are plains, valleys, large mountains and small hills, tornadoes and dangers abound. Harsh, unforgiving, but majestic and beautiful, we see this land captured in the paintings of the Transcendentalists, but also the cinematic tableaus of Yellowstone's world. The land exudes this intense power, making the characters strong and capable, survival-minded and animalistic as a result, but also wild, free, and enraptured by the beauty and danger and intensity of it all. And while Transcendentalism posits that all men are good by nature, Yellowstone does not. Geography interlude. Fun fact, you don't have to just take it from Yellowstone. The whole landmass of North and South America has always been a rough place to live. In fact, farming wasn't discovered in America until well after Europe and Asia, because the main axis of the continent is north to south, and thanks to snow and glaciers, migration of seeds wasn't possible. Also, the only animal available for domestication for travel were giant llamas, so it really took a while. The nomads who came here by way of the Bering Strait stayed nomadic for a long time as a result. It's hard not to feel that America, or that land itself, could have a philosophy when watching Yellowstone. The rugged harshness, the cold of the plains, the strange humidity of the south, the searing deserts of the southwest, and the deep forests of the north. The land is as diverse as the people who live on it. It's divided up naturally by shifts in landscape, and people seem to have followed its lead. Even the natives who came here first were incredibly diverse people, with so many tribes spread across the land. They fought constantly for survival and dominance, if the PBS documentary Native America is any indication. Our land is not like any other in the world, and Yellowstone really captures that. Yellowstone's depiction of an older America, of an undeveloped America, is unique, as most stories on TV nowadays take place in familiar settings that have been settled for a while. This world of pure freedom is one free of binding structures. To fully understand how this philosophy presents in the world of Yellowstone, we must understand the Dutton women, specifically the character of Elsa. From the moment that the wagon train arrives west, she begins both physically and metaphorically pulling off the shackles of structured society. She has a relationship with a native man, she wears pants, rides her horse, and backsasses her mother. She's too much for even her parents to handle. Her wildness is like the land. It doesn't conform to human standards and structures, the binding dresses of the time. She wants to do what she wants to do, and her parents have no idea how to help her or protect her. She is like the horses she rides and the land she loves. She is unafraid of anything, nearly killing a man at one point. Her death is heartbreaking because you're not just watching her die, you are seeing the wild freedom die, the building of train tracks and modern civilization across the land. Elsa encompasses the freedom of nature and the American wilderness. Here, Sheridan is implying that in nature, women are not bound by the rules of the patriarchy or the structures of society. Though her mother begs her, she never relents, because only her freedom matters. The land beckons to her, and as we see, her heaven is riding horses across the plains, drinking it all in. This idea pervades through the entire Yellowstone universe. Sheridan takes this idea of modern structures as being a problem and expands upon it, claiming that the whole of large-scale civilization is a problem. Whether it's the royal family and its class structures, the government and its bureaucracy, business and its never-ending expansion, the corruption of lawyers and the justice system, it seems seems that the characters in the show suffer from the larger structure parts of the world more than anything else. They want nothing to do with the world outside of the one they have created on the ranch. And this idea is both a detriment and a boon to America. It comes with a cost. Being away from large cities and the structures of the world may be nice. It might be nice to not be surrounded by jerks. But when Margaret Dutton freezes to death after her husband dies, nearly taking her 2 boys with her, well, you really wish someone had been around then. When Alex gets trapped in a car without gas, you wish there had been a town nearby to help. When Monica loses her child because driving to the hospital in labor she hits a bison, you wish the EMS services could have gotten to her sooner. But it doesn't matter, because many people in Middle America believe this too. People are the problem and solitude is the answer. It's not about whether certain political parties or the government at large is corrupt, or even how these larger structures and institutions function or don't function. By virtue of their very existence, they are corrupt. The entirety of Governor John Dutton's first day in office is an example of this. There are no clear issues with the world he's entered, but he hates it so much he spends his entire first day trying to shirk his responsibilities as governor. From ignoring meetings to firing his policy staff and hiring Beth as his chief of staff, he even admits that he's a terrible governor because he never wanted the job. He just took it to keep his ranch. He can't concede that even though his sometimes girlfriend Linnell is a politician doing her best to protect the land, there might be something good or decent in structures like government or public services. Even if their presence is oftentimes helpful, they are an impediment to freedom, and that's all that matters. So, all of this creates a world that is free, but also quite lonesome and oftentimes dangerous. Now, obvious disclaimer, there is more to Transcendentalism. This is just a quick overview. If you're skeptical, do your own research. So, how do we cope with this harsh reality? This isn't what's real for everyone, but much of America embraces Yellowstone's vision of the world as reality. This is the place where we make the jump from the Duttons to a more broad MAGA philosophy. So, to cope with all of this, many have embraced Social Darwinism. That is, the theories of Charles Darwin impressed upon human society. The ideas of natural selection and survival of the fittest as applying to America. According to Robert Reich, we've been down this road before. Around the turn of the century, robber barons used this idea to justify their insane wealth and the inequities of their world. It's funny, so many of the ideas we're talking about here last saw their heyday between 1850 and the beginning of the 20th century, which, according to Robert Reich and many others, is where the current set of Republican policies wish to take us. Social Darwinism touches on this idea that humans are just animals, and this is completely natural. In the way that man shouldn't interfere with what is natural, one animal dominating over the other, the government shouldn't step in and care for those who need it. Sheridan touches on this constantly throughout his series, because they only take place in spaces that seem wild. And I say that they seem wild because a ranch isn't wild. It can be surrounded by forests and well cared for, but it is a human interjection upon what is natural. The whole project of human civilization is an interjection upon the earth, other than when we were small tribal nomads, which is something that the series constantly presses as being the best time in history. In fact, at one point, Jacob makes this assertion about humanity.
There's this theory that these scientists came up with after studying tribes in India and Africa, South America. The smaller tribes didn't have any government, didn't need any. They could sit down and talk out their problems, decide where to plant crops, to hunt. It was just a big family, really. But when the number of people got up around 500, if there wasn't any government, the strongest people would take advantage of the weakest. Every time, without fail, they would enslave, rape, steal, enrich their lives at the expense of other people's lives.
This is pure nonsense. No such study exists. It's a fake story pulled from something called the Dunbar number, which only claims that people cannot have more than 150 relationships at any given time. But it's worth mentioning because the whole project of human civilization makes social Darwinism bunk. As archaeologists will tell you, humans became civilized because it allowed us to take care of those who needed help. But Yellowstone takes the position that social Darwinism is completely natural, and therefore selfishness is the base of human nature. In its instinctive need to survive, an animal doesn't think of caring for its fellow animals, and in survival of the fittest, we must only look out for ourselves. It's also why the whole idea that there is no right or wrong comes up throughout the series. In the animal world, there is no right or wrong. Here, as animals animals, we owe each other nothing. Our only obligation is to ourselves and our own survival. Which is funny when you think about it, because animals can often be quite cooperative when necessary, placing humans outside of society and civilization, making natural selection the only law. It's all just a bit strange, given the fact that the whole project of human civilization is an interjection upon that which is natural. And the Duttons are just like that, patently selfish, helping only when it's easy, but interested solely in their own survival. It's why there is no issue with Trump taking care of himself. This is man's nature. At least he's honest about it. Because we are all animals, we owe nothing to anyone or each other. Assume that the behaviors of most right-wingers are based on this sensibility, and things make sense. But it's not about looking up or down at anyone, it's about understanding how a group of people, faced with impossible odds against immeasurable power, take what is happening and own it. By accepting that man's nature as animals is what drives certain men to become ultra-wealthy, they can give themselves an explanation, an understanding of what is happening and why. And even if you can't change what's happening, that does offer some comfort. Social Darwinism leads to what we might call rugged individualism or the bootstrapping mentality, and there is a logic to calling any governmental action socialist. It's not just because helping the weak would work against this idea, but because the government is corrupt and in bed with business and powerful people. But we'll discuss that in a moment. No, rugged individualism gives people back a sense of power. This is how right-wingers cope with that sense of powerlessness we all feel in modern times. If I can work harder, if we can work harder, then maybe somehow we can make it. No one owes you anything and no one deserves anything. It's acceptance of the most painful and difficult things in life. It glorifies the struggle. We see that with the Duttons and how much unnecessary pain they go through. We struggle the same way animals do. We are all part of the circle of life, and that is natural, so it's okay. There has been, for a long time, this idea in right-wing circles towards making biology into something political. Social Darwinism, gender politics, eugenics, anti-abortion movements, anti-vaccine movements, these are all part of this idea of valuing what is natural over human intervention. In accepting what they feel they cannot change, they accept horror. Right-wingers accept the darkness and brokenness of institutions as immutable, unchangeable facts rather than transient reality. Yet in doing so, they rubber stamp darkness in all things and in all people forever. In accepting this concept of social Darwinism, they assume that everyone and everything is evil. There is no good or morality really in this world, just life as it is and horrible people doing horrible things. It is pure misanthropy, the way that Beth, at the end of the series, talks about tourists after moving to a more remote area of Montana. She relishes in the fact that bars in her new town chase them away. The pure hatred these people seem to feel for strangers. It could be considered animalistic in nature, but it's so much more targeted. Animals will bark at anyone. They are much more targeted in who they hate and why. The evil of the world, this darkness that Yellowstone highlights, shows up most in the systems of the world. If humans are purely evil, animalist, selfish, then our institutions, the government, business, aristocracy, the immigration system, and so on, are also evil. In fact, because they cluster humans together so closely, they are even more evil. Take, for example, Alex's encounter with the Ellis Island immigration system upon arriving in the States. The complete callousness of the men, the humiliation, the horror. It's dehumanizing. It should be a call to shift our modern immigration system, which has been even more dehumanizing and horrifying in modern times. Instead, social Darwinism pushes us to accept the horrors of it. In the world of Yellowstone, the immigration system should not exist at all. No borders, no government, nothing. So because it exists, it is evil, and by virtue of its existence, it will remain so. It is a part of man's evil nature and the evil nature of our world. Alex's ability to somehow survive all of it feels like another attempt at painting rugged individualism as the answer. Well, if she, an upper-crust young woman, was able to be tough enough to survive it, if others can't, then that's on them. Of course, people who believe in these ideas do not need much prodding to believe in them. Upon any examination or critical thinking, it makes absolutely no sense that a beautiful, well-spoken, clearly upper-class young woman would not be treated well by immigration authorities, even if she was traveling in a lower class. If systems are evil in this way, then they can also be manipulated by those who are intelligent or fit into society's ideas about wealth and power. But again, this is a myth, that all people are evil, the whole world is horrid, and that systems are illegitimate by virtue of their very existence. It delegitimizes all institutions in modern times, claiming them to be corrupt completely, not capable or worthy of reform, which is patently untrue. We need models, and these are the wrong ones, showing all institutions as antithetical to freedom at best and horrifyingly corrupt at worst. Sheridan paints a world where they are completely corrupt, but also never have to answer for the horrors that they inflict upon us. This is a product of man's nature, not anything else. There is no changing these systems the same way there is no changing the whole of humanity, which is why every single person who even attempts to be good must be evil deep down. If you claim or even try to be generous, kind, decent, or giving, you are automatically a target of suspicion. You must be a hypocrite. It flies in the face of the right-wing thought that man can only be selfish. Therefore, every progressive or liberal politician or leader, anyone trying to be good, must automatically be a hypocrite or foolish. Even Summer, a progressive character introduced briefly later on in the series, is a protester working with a movement that cares about animal suffering among a variety of left-wing causes. She's part of a green movement, and while John can respect her for being principled, Beth only sees her as another person who wants their land, though that is never her intent. She just sees ranching as wrong because animals feel pain. Beth uses her for her own means and then gets Summer jailed. And then, when she's staying at the house after John felt bad and got her paroled early, Beth assaults her. The irony of the feeling that everyone is evil that right-wingers have is that they themselves end up perpetrating evil because they feel that is the nature of everything around them. Any rational person can see good and bad, right or wrong, even in a basic sense. But the unwavering belief that everyone and everything is problematic remains, no matter who it is. And this is important because MAGA does this constantly in reference to every left-wing politician. We see this attitude in Yellowstone with Beth quite often. Beth loves to take people down and decides to target a professor hitting on her in a bar in season 5. He is teaching liberal arts while living remotely in Montana in a way that benefits him using the capitalist system. But he's not real. He is a great manifestation of how right-wingers claim that even liberals and progressives who claim to not be corrupt must be corrupt. It's why Fox News calls every Democrat a socialist or a communist and then claims that any wealth they possess somehow must make them a hypocrite. They must hide things from their taxes and their assets just like everyone else does. How dare they try to claim to be honest? There are no straightforward socialists or communists anywhere in our system. I'm not even sure most of America could identify Marx from a photo. It's just not real. Or perhaps it is, as a famous transcendentalist once said, people seem not to see that their opinion of the world is also a confession of their character. Just because right-wingers are honest about their own darkness doesn't mean they aren't still problematic, and it doesn't mean that everyone else is evil. This inability to reconcile the complexities of the world is dangerous, but we'll talk more about that later on. In this world of social Darwinism, humans are utterly powerless.
What's on fire?
Forest. Happens every year. Some years worse than others.
How they start?
Lightning.
Is anybody gonna put it out?
I mean, I'll try. Only thing that can put it out is God.
God puts out the fire?
God brings rain. Rain puts out the fire.
Nature puts out the fire, kid.
That's what I said.
Climate change isn't real as a man-made phenomenon. It is God's will, because destruction is the natural order of the world, and humans aren't doing anything out of the ordinary. We were born to die, and that is it. Humans aren't just powerless, but pathetic pawns to be pushed around. Only God can change the weather, bring children, and determine the trajectory of our lives. There is an unprecedented amount of destiny, karma, fate, whatever you want to call the invisible forces that make things happen in the world. On a personal level, it seems that most things are out of the character's hands because of this mindset. But this idea of human powerlessness is most important in the discussion about nature. There's a constant theme that we are in a fight with nature to survive, and we will always lose no matter what. Time will overtake us, and nature will always win. This is why cities, man's attempts to exert dominance over nature are futile. Following that line of thinking, there is no climate change, certainly not man-made, and no such thing as the Anthropocene. We have no hand in the things happening in our world. In Sheridan's mind, nature has been here forever and is out to destroy us. Our efforts to destroy it seem valid in that sense because we never will. Yet, by virtue of admitting that the Earth is very, very old, Sheridan admits that this moment in Earth's history is very safe. I'll make a link below to a video that can show you the time span of our planet's history so you can better understand. Nature isn't out to kill us randomly unless we act stupidly with it. If the fossil that Alex and Spencer see in Africa is any indication, we've been here for a long time, and if it weren't for Earth's temperate climate, we wouldn't have been able to expand as much as we have. One could argue that this calm time span in Earth's history, where humans have been able to farm and grow cities and civilization, was practically tailor-made just for us. One could even argue that it is nature's will that we have grown as much as we have and survived for as long as we have. Because if you watch the video I have linked below, you will see that there were much worse times to be on Earth than this moment in time. We can envision stories of man versus nature, but the story is different now. We are taking over nature and eating it alive. There are still places where it's powerful, but not where most of us humans live, and we will destroy ourselves and nature at this pace. Yet destruction, as Sheridan pitches it, is the way of everything, both man and nature. Most people don't see how it is all about perception. Destruction is not an ending, it is a transformation. It is constant change. Even in years and years, the planet, it will still be here, and we can choose to be as well. But we must choose it. Choose change over ending. Destruction fails to be transformation because we dig in and resist change. Even the end of the series is not a destruction. It is simply a change, from a large ranch to a small one. It is still partially the Duttons' land and their history held upon it, but we can choose. That is our free will. Stubbornness in his mind is also the nature of man, but it's just another word for stupidity. Funnily enough, it's proof that we have free will to be dumb or smart. We just use it poorly. This whole nature is out of our hands argument is the most dangerous thing, and it didn't just come out of Yellowstone. It's a repurposing of the man versus nature struggle, something that's been going on forever. From Moby Dick to Yellowstone, man's constant desire to overcome the challenges of the natural world. But Yellowstone makes it seem like it is completely out of our hands. Both in the past and even now, we are at the whims of nature for our survival, just doing the best we can. Though that isn't true anymore. These stories would make us believe that is still the case, and by doing so, push the narrative that so many wish to make real, that climate change is not man-made, but just nature doing its thing. Maybe it's the planet still warming up after the last ice age ended. Maybe it's just the Earth shifting like it has for so many years because humanity's time here and our records of Earth's history barely scratch the surface. Our data has gaps in it. How could we say that this is man-made? The Earth is so much older than us. It's like mashing together man versus nature, the Earth's geologic record, our limited data on the subject, and our historical insecurities about our existence on this planet, because survival used to be really hard, and using it to further the cause of the wealthy polluters. We have mostly conquered nature, no matter what life in the Wild West might claim, and we are making choices every day that are altering it. It is so dangerous to claim that we have no part in the destruction of the natural world that is causing the climate to change, when beyond the data, we can feel the difference in the air. In doing so, we deny our own intuition and feelings in the face of these events. If Transcendentalism posits that feelings are more important than facts, then we should listen to our feelings. Don't things feel different? Isn't there a sense in the air that we have changed the natural world? I guess it's challenging for some folks nestled in the far corners of the Earth, where nature still feels huge. This desire for seclusion in Yellowstone speaks to a hatred of humans, as I mentioned before. The importance of nature coupled with the hatred of human civilizations, and an even greater hatred of modernity, creates a bent towards green anarchism. Sheridan's worldview of how society should be is clear. In the 1923 Season 2 premiere, two native characters, Runs His Horse and his daughter Tiona, talk about how the government destroyed native populations. He tells her that the barter economy has made things easier, but cost people their survival skills, like the knowledge of making bows and arrows for hunting. This is how the US government keeps the natives beggars. It is a tale of the need for self-reliance, but factually incorrect, because violence, disease, ethnic cleansing are the things that decimated native populations, not the barter economy. So this conversation is not about the government, it is about the broken nature of systems. What Sheridan is doing here is clear. He is talking about modern government. It is what he's always talking about. This eco-anarchist idea of small populations and going back to nature as man's true state. It's something that he hints at throughout the series, but it really becomes important in 1923. It is the sense that humans would be better off living as small groups, self-reliant, without large systems. Nature is so powerful it will destroy humanity back to this state anyway, a sort of quasi-tribal hunter-gatherer state. It's not just better for nature, nature, but also for us, because humans are somehow healthier living with nature. Obviously, we saw it in the Rule of 500 episode where Jacob speaks about it. But even in the first season of 1923, in episode 3, where the family is in Bozeman, a city that has cropped up near the ranch, and they run into a man selling electricity and renting appliances.
So you sell electricity, and then you rent all the things that need electricity?
More or less?
We don't need any of these things.
Well, the conveniences. Their use gives you time to do other things.
What other things?
Other chores.
So you invent machines to do those, then what do we do?
Go on a picnic. Go for a swim. Go to the cinema. You can enjoy a more leisurely life.
It ain't more leisurely, because we gotta work more to pay for all this stuff.
Now here's the thing. We buy all this stuff, we're not working for ourselves anymore, we're working for you.
The funny thing is that the women of the family who actually do that work have no problem with the machines, but the men who never wash a dish or a piece of clothing can wax poetic about how modernity is a terrible thing. There is so much misanthropy in this argument, just pure hatred for humanity and human civilizations. The funny thing is that Kara eventually pushes Jacob into getting electricity for the ranch. But when you put this love of nature with the hatred of humans and the social Darwinism all together, it sounds just a little bit like eugenics. And it makes sense given the policies of this current administration. We should just let nature take its course, which is the underpinning of a lot of the Make America Healthy Again movement's core ideas. But it's so much deeper than that. There is a sense that having fewer people in the world, and in one's life, would restore the world and our lives to a better place somehow, and that the suffering and hardship of living close to the bone, as Walden claims, would bring back a sense of meaning to life. It would be life without all of the complexities of the modern world, just kids, family, friends, and people we trust around us. A sense of tradition, legacy, and familiarity could return to us. This leads us to the next ideology at play, which is the myth of the cowboy. And obviously cowboys exist, but this is more about the politicized identity of cowboys and Western culture. To paraphrase one of my favorite Substacks, Letters from an American, this idea of the cowboy, the American West, and rugged individualism came to be in the post-Civil War era. It pushed this idea that the cowboy was the true American, one who worked hard and provided for his family, using violence if necessary. And he wanted nothing more than to be left alone by the government, free to run his business. But this was a political narrative. The American West received just as much aid as any other region. Finding success in the West depended on access to capital as much as it did in the East, and gun regulation and control were serious business. Cowboy culture isn't one that we talk about much because it is all about the trappings of the ranch. It sort of expands on Transcendentalism, but basically creates an anarchical world wherein there are no systems because they are so corrupt. A man on the ranch is free to care for his animals, manage his land, and simply enjoy his day-to-day life. Systems and civilization are the enemy. They are antithetical to freedom in every way. Lawlessness is man's natural state, and systems prevent us from living with nature as God intended. Only the strong will survive, and man's structures prevent this, which is wrong. The government and systems only create beggars and force us to conform to their ideas of life, which aren't natural. In this jungle-like world, manipulation, strength of all kinds, all of man's darkest, most animalistic impulses are necessary because only survival matters. This is the only way to have freedom. There is no good or evil, right or wrong, we just have to do whatever we must. And all of that is to say, in this world, we are all nothing but animals in a few clothes. And this world is leaking into the rest of the world, destroying our institutions and setting back the project of human civilization. But what does it matter if the government and institutions break? Because in the Yellowstone universe, lawlessness is natural. We are all nothing but wolves and sheep now, nothing but people fighting each other and the powerful for survival. Life is all about hardship, and that makes the few good things sweet. The irony being that the ranching industry does receive support from the government, and while I don't know the specifics of it, I do think it's salient that in the end, the Duttons don't lose the ranch to market equities or any other business entity, but to the fact that the taxes would be too heavy on it. Because America isn't a kingdom. It never was, no matter what some conservatives want. The anti-government message is finding its way forward in modern times to a dangerous place. I struggled to watch season 2 of 1923 and to go back and write this after Trump's election, because I can see how these ideas are being used to destroy the government, and how the utopian world Trump is painting, without a strong government, is one that will fall to a monarchic organization instead. We are a part of the democratic system, whether we like it or not, and to assume that we are merely beggars at the hands of it is literal nonsense. We don't understand the kind of political and social power we have in America, to protest, to harass our elected leaders into doing what we want. We influence the system in ways we don't even realize. There are stories of older people who just sit at home all day and pick apart people's voter registration, who watch Fox News and decide that's what they're going to call their congressman about over and over again until he has to make it a priority. People influence the government constantly, so much so that Republican congresspeople of all stripes have fallen to a king, who believe they are doing the duty of their constituents in allowing the institutions of America to break. So let's dive deeper. How do these ideas grow? What comes of enacting them? Extending these ideologies further, we can learn more. The most obvious result of the extension of these ideas is the destruction of everything in our world. The world of Yellowstone and that of republicanism doesn't like our society as it is today. As I mentioned before, the very existence of our institutions means that they are corrupt. And while the corruption and horror wrought by them is awful, what's even worse is the freedom they apparently take from us. We saw this in the case of Elsa in 1883. These structures are binding us up like corsets, keeping us from being truly free. Many Americans see an ending of these things as the only recourse for their freedom. The freedom to make choices, live through the consequences of those choices, and therefore learn and grow accordingly. In theory, it's an idea of total freedom, but also complete responsibility that supposedly plays out on an individual scale. So, in 1883, when a group of German migrants are cut from the wagon train because they have smallpox, it's their business. Even though Germany had mandatory smallpox vaccinations since 1874, it's not about historical accuracy. It's about sending a message. People should be free to make those choices and live with those choices, even if they're stupid. A not so subtle dig at the pandemic of our time. Obviously not an intelligent move, but their choice. To many Americans, we are all merely free humans, learning and growing all at once, and the restrictions of the government, business, religion, and more make that impossible. We can't have a home to call our own because the government taxes it or splits it up. It's almost the sense that if anything is out of our control, it is sinister somehow. Anything not owned and run by a single small person is dangerous somehow. The government is out to get us, to help big business and wealthy folks take our land through legal but immoral methods. And they're right. Supply-side economics created these things and these feelings. The sense that our homes and traditions and lives are being destroyed to benefit the wealthy. We feel this sense that we are at war for our ways of life as globalization brought on by the elite moves us around. We face different challenges from our ancestors, and we don't feel we have the tools to handle them. Meanwhile, the global shopping mall reduces us to nothing but consumers, sucking away meaning from our now strange lives. So unfortunately, social Darwinism, the ideals of the cowboy, the faith of Transcendentalism galvanize us towards a destructive path. They offer us a clear direction and plan of action, one bathed in fire to get back something familiar, something comfortable, or as Beth put it so eloquently here, describing her takedown of the stock of the private equity firm seeking to buy her family's land.
When you find yourself standing on the wall of the Alamo Villa, the outcome has already been decided. The only thing left to do is to kill as much as you can before they kill you.
Desperate people have nothing to lose. And while Americans can obviously distinguish between reality and television, in their minds, many of them are living this, and they're not totally wrong. Case in point, I was speaking to someone a few years ago, a cancer survivor who was trying to mobilize their local community to fight against a warehouse that the local government was planning to build near their home. I'm not sure how we got onto the topic, but we both spoke of how much we liked Beth Dutton, someone who wasn't afraid to fight for her home, her family, and the things that were important to her, something that no one really does anymore. She's not just a hollow mannequin of female empowerment, but an angry woman using her rage to protect something meaningful to her. And this is why destruction is now proliferating across America, because people see endless warehouses, expensive homes, malls and strip malls, golf courses, everything for those with wealth destroying those who are not wealthy, and they see the government as being complicit in those things. In a way, it is. Under the guise of the economy, our elected leaders have failed to protect us and instead used our fears of economic insecurity to enrich themselves. It causes people to want to seek outsiders, people who claim to hate the system even if they are part of it, but people don't understand. Anxious minds are easily manipulated. These new people, like Trump, have just as many awful plans in mind. At the moment, there are no real models for how to truly fight for our homes and our lives, just a sense that we must be able to handle things on an individual level. It creates this deep and intense anger. We cannot fix our communities at large. At best, we can only protect ourselves, and not even that most of the time. If you believe that only you can pull yourself out of your life's troubles, if there is no social safety net around you and you don't feel you can ask for help, then life is difficult. No man is an island. But to feel that you must be means that you will become enraged, lost inside your own mind and body, alone and surrounded by stress and difficulty. The frustration of trying and failing without help is exhausting. So, we reach for those who are telling a compelling story of destruction, one we can believe in. Angry people are, in my opinion, the easiest to manipulate. You cannot see your reflection in boiling water. Similarly, you cannot see reality when you are enraged. In Yellowstone, there is a constant reference to war, to a fight or a battle. The characters are fighting for the ranch, for their way of life. Throughout the series, there are shootouts and attacks. Even in the modern series, multiple family members are injured or murdered at any given time. The references to violence following the Duttons, war used in the titles of episodes, the obsession with guns and aggression all speak to a dangerous world. I doubt the Wild West has been anything like that since it was settled, but this is TV, it is supposed to be dramatic. The problem is that it captures the most fundamental part of right-wing culture. This sense that their world is always under attack, from minorities, from immigrants, from liberal policies, from cultural changes, from change itself. And in a world at war, there are no friends or allies, and allegiances shift constantly because it is a war for survival. This is why suddenly every city is a battle zone, and cutting resources for those in need is acceptable. This attitude takes simple daily things like people saying Happy Holidays instead of Merry Christmas, or the pizza oven problem in New York last year, to regulations on gas stoves and shower pressure, things that are stupid, and makes them into huge deals. Anything being different or not working out suddenly feels like an attack or a war. It gives the sense that life isn't just changing naturally or even by the hands of business people looking to make more income, but that it is somehow being manipulated as part of a sinister plot. It takes ordinary grievances and discomforts and makes them into sinister cabals, when it's just wealthy folks looking to make money that have cut the quality of our goods, forced poor people to migrate due to climate change, driven up crime and drugs by cutting the budgets of social programs to fund tax cuts for the wealthy, and generally changed the fabric of our world. But it must be a sinister shadow government instead. This attitude of being at war at all times is why we see MAGA uninterested in cooperation. They don't believe in diplomacy because that is a rational, calm response, which isn't the answer when everything feels like war. This ideology of destruction, whether we like it or not, is politically two things. First, anarchism. Now, anarchism is a world without systems oppressing us, and it's kind of an incredibly noble ideology. I remember once hearing that some of the greatest thinkers, from MLK to Gandhi, believed that that was the answer, but that it wasn't necessarily realistic. Our world runs on systems, and to break them all apart is to break apart our world completely. The project of civilization, however challenging, is worth our effort and energy, because otherwise we end up with a breakdown of not only problematic systems, but also law and order and eventually violent anarchy. It's also what allows broken systems that claim to be outside the system to emerge, like the Trump shadow government during the Biden administration. Secondly, an ideology of destruction in this fashion is also connected to the scariest boogeyman of the 20th century, communism. For those who have read and understood the works of Karl Marx, the odd-looking Santa Claus man, he first and foremost advocated for violent revolution as a means for ordinary workers to protect themselves from wealthy aristocrats. The endgame of these themes and ideas won't be that, but I think that Sheridan and many of his followers might be interested in the works of Marx, and let me explain why. In a world where the middle class is rapidly shrinking, Marx's ideas are ever present. To add context to the much maligned work of Karl Marx is to understand that he wrote his manifesto on communism during the turn of the century in Germany, where there was no real middle class, just modern-day feudalism. People in America who claim to be woke, that is, aware of structural and systemic injustices that have plagued America since its inception, will look at the country in terms of race, gender, and a variety of ever smaller categories. It's funny to me that conservatives call this Marxist because Marx would roll over in his grave at that interpretation. Karl Marx wrote the Communist Manifesto at the turn of the century in a Germany filled with peasants forced to leave their farms to work in factories in cities. They were exploited like crazy. You had people getting injured, no limits on working hours, small children in dangerous jobs. There were no worker protections. Marx wrote his manifesto to encourage these people to take control of their lives, that is, to take control of the means of production and save themselves from a lifetime of bondage. He saw the whole of history as a struggle between the rich and the poor, or the proletariat and the bourgeoisie, as he called them. This is what is known as a classist analysis, and while woke conversations can take class into account, they look at everything, which is the point of said awareness. From what I understand it, Marx pretty much focused only on class. And in the case of Sheridan and Yellowstone and Marx, only class is ever considered. The focus is always poor white people, and in Montana, even the broader Midwest, anyone else is seen as alien, people of other races, backgrounds, and especially the rich. Sheridan has said before that Roadhouse is one of his favorite movies, and it focuses broadly on the same subject as his work, a wealthy man taking over a town or a space and trying to make it his playground, except for 1883, which focuses on the roots of Transcendentalism that really came to define early America. As Transcendentalists were skeptical of the modern world, so was Marx. So the focus on class as the driving issue, the bourgeoisie villains, and the general skepticism towards the modern world in favor of a more agrarian structure, not to mention the fact that Marx was just as obsessed with land ownership. Marx loathed wealth as being unspiritual and greed as extremely sinful, much in the way that Christianity also champions the poor and despises complex financial systems used to keep them oppressed. He believed in dignity, rights, and land ownership for the poor, and the way in which Sheridan encourages his characters to fight back as violently and viciously as possible against encroachments on their land or their personhood would have absolutely been his thing. This is what Karl Marx had in mind in a very basic sense. Violent revolution against the wealthy so as to give the poor and disenfranchised a chance. Poor people being able to live off the land with their dignity intact, eking out a modest living, but finding satisfaction in labor for the sake of labor. He believed that the government should help people do all of these things, but in his mind, the government was the people. There was collective action and governance, kind of like a co-op situation. But the belief in only the darkness in men, the pure hatred of all institutions, and the aggressive level of individualism means that even an attempt at this sort of world would be impossible. The Duttons, and most right-wingers, believe in private property, and that's where the similarities stop. Politics can get strange when you think about the fact that if you go far enough right, you end up on the left. And you may not want to hear this. The deepest way in which the right-wing ideology ends up encompassing a variety of communist/Marxist ideology is the way in which the right seems to elevate ideology above all things. The mob mentality that seems to take over, the fears around underpinnings of the ideology being upended by facts, reality, or anything else breeds a kind of paranoia among the right wing that I, as a young person who likes history, have only seen in interpretations of Soviet Russia and Mao's China. In past videos, I've talked about A Gentleman in Moscow and Three-Body Problem, and there are distinctive scenes where characters will point out flaws in the logic of the regime and be punished accordingly. We can't point the satellite shooting out a message for aliens as a part of our secret search for alien intelligence program at the Red Sun. Think of the political implications in Red China. Or we can't let people know that there's a famine happening in the Ukraine. How would it make the party look? It's all about preserving ideology. The government, it can't stand up to questions or uncertainty. What's happening with Trump seems like other autocrats bolstered by an ideology, whether it be fascism or communism, Stalin or Mao. In their cases, communism, being an economic system, left room for authoritarians to step in. Again, bolstered by an ideology that started off noble, supporting workers suffering under a cruel, wealthy upper class, and ended in authoritarian regimes. The same way that modern republicanism started off as a frustration with corruption and bureaucratic failures is slowly devolving into authoritarianism as well. Because ideology should be fed by facts, reality, and the world around it. We shouldn't be trying to conform the world into our ideas of how it should be so that we are comfortable. But after that strange interlude, we come back to issues of power. If there is no collective power, then there is only individual power. In a world where we are completely powerless, whether it is against nature or the government, business, or other institutions, in this world where we are forever at war, there is only one thing that matters, and that is our personal choice. Even if they are determined mostly by karmic histories, genetics, things we aren't aware of, we don't know that. So our decisions are all we have. Truly, it's the only kind of agency we have here. The ability to say no to a vaccine, to say no to medical intervention if we don't want to live completely disabled, to choose where to bury our child and start a ranch. Often these decisions feel foolish. but it's often all some people have, and it is more important to die by our principles than to live as slaves. In a world starved of meaning, living by your principles, even if they aren't logical, is a kind of personal power. In real life, it translates to stories like the measles outbreak in Texas, where the parents of a child who died because he was unvaccinated still believe that vaccines were the problem. They seem stupid to those who vaccinate, but they believe what they believe, and in this case, their beliefs are all they have left now. So it becomes more important to live for principles than to live at all. The idea of keeping a failing ranch becomes more important than anything else, and the family seems to choose it even over each other. The principle of owning one's own business, not being a slave to a 9-to-5 job, living and working with the land, of owning land as a kind of self-actualization, all of it is more important than the family, the children, even life itself. It's a choice, not a logical one, but a personal one, and that would be fine. But these principles are all about being against something, not for something. It's not a way to live, to always be railing against the modern world. It's slavery to principles, imaginary and pointless, because it meets an emotional need. But if Maslow's hierarchy of needs is relevant at all, physical needs like food and rest, safety needs, friends and family, these should come well before the ranch. Before being against modernity or being anti-institutions, values are more important than even survival. So often when it feels as though people are choosing illogical pathways, it's easy to dismiss them as stupid, but there is another layer of things that we don't see. I spoke at the beginning about Transcendentalism and about how logic isn't relevant here, and I hope that's coming into focus. It's not about rationality or logical choices. If anything, logical people, like the businessman villains of the series, are seen as being cold, decisive, and devoid of even basic kindness or decency. Logic is a kind of enemy here, because it is meaningless. It offers no satisfaction to the ordinary American, and that's something that elites and pundits often miss. A breakdown of institutions, a world where only darkness reigns, a place where humans are powerless, it begs for a feudal system. Ironic, because the wealthy supposed leaders are the villains. But if this is the world as it is with no collective human agency, then a king shall rise. This is a space ripe for authoritarianism. Love him or hate him, Trump is a king. The idea of karmic revenge of the aristocrats that were booted from America because of the revolution in 1776 was something discussed in the new Batman series last year. I did a video on that. If you're interested, I've linked it below. People thought that series to be propaganda, but consider this. Next year is our 250-year anniversary, and not many empires, states, and nations make it to that milestone. It's only fitting that the pattern of the past should repeat itself. And it's not surprising that John Dutton, when he's elected governor of Montana in season 5, also rules like a king. His ranch is also described as a kingdom many times. I imagine that most people watching John Dutton be like a king when he was governor in season 5 were egging him on. Finally, someone who will cut through the red tape and bureaucracy and governmental nonsense and do what needs to be done to preserve our way of life and what is important to us. So if you think that any of Trump's weird behavior freaks out his more ardent supporters, you would be wrong. He is entitled to his selfishness. He's just another working man looking out for himself and by extension other working people. And because he has found a way to speak the language of the people, expressing the darkness of reality, the spreading of war, or the whole immigration as invasion thing, his own darkness, all these things endear Trump to his supporters. Everyone wants those easy answers. Destroy the old order, build a fence, keep people out, rebuild factories, just make laws quickly and somehow things will work out. To many, he's a reformer, like those old 80s movies filled with cops who don't play by the rules and get real results. He's good enough because no one is truly good. Tribalism is a big part of Yellowstone. Us and them. There is a sense of tribalism with Trump that most logically minded people don't understand. Tribalism, that sense of connection with a group of people and the loyalty attached to it. He's our man, the man of the people, because he understands and agrees with our beliefs. It doesn't matter how rich he is because he earned it. He's from the America we remember. People will forgive him for anything because they feel a kind of loyalty to him, and they hate the systems and institutions of our world so much. Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is still paying off her student debt, but people will believe she's a millionaire because she lives in New York. And Kristi Noem, with $3,000 in her purse and a $5,000 Rolex on her wrist, is of the working people because she lives in the Midwest. Everything from race, background, politics, and beliefs play into the forgiveness people have for Trump and MAGA people, but ultimately it's all about representation. If they can see themselves in their leaders, that's all that matters to them. It's forgiveness and empathy for Republicans and automatic hate for Democrats, no thinking involved. Trump is the toughest man in the room. His awful behavior only supports that fact. he has earned the right to be a king. In this version of the jungle, only the king and his family matter. He's the king because he says he is, and he eats everything around him. He earned his place, just like the Duttons earned their place through toughness. So, when Beth gets into a bar fight in season 5, she can basically get away with it because she is the princess of this place. This is the natural order, and liberal democracy is deeply unnatural. We shouldn't be supporting it. Liberal democracy and order simply turn us into sheep to be herded around. There is no competition for the top spot, just pathetic people living half-lives, lost in their boring jobs, decaying in front of the TV set, in the jungle, in the natural world of Yellowstone. We are truly alive in ways that we can't be in liberal democracy or in a social safety net. So, because Trump is more important than anyone else, the rule of law is nonsense. You cannot follow a king and believe in a judicial system. Only the authority of the king matters, and law means nothing. And in Yellowstone, it never meant anything. It was always about Western vengeance, not the rule of law. There are countless examples of this throughout the series, but in the opening scene from season 5, Casey is working as the livestock commissioner and is trying to catch horse thieves. They are desperate to run across the border and get into Canada instead. Our jail system is somehow more messed up than Canada's, which is not a badge of honor as a Western nation with supposed human rights. But those who espouse Western vengeance over the liberal judiciary would say it is. Casey and his team specifically prevent them from crossing the river and getting to Canada because it's not important that these people are caught or that the horses are returned, but that they face American justice. It's all just a bit intense and perhaps unnecessary. It's more important that they be punished as severely as possible. And that's the point here. American/European customs, policies, laws like due process, fair trial, human rights are not a good thing anymore. Horse thieves need to be made an example of. So does anyone who breaks the law, no matter how small. The whole point of the law protecting people who are picked up for a crime is that they aren't always guilty. And if you should ever end up in that position, whether you did something wrong or not, those rights are extended to you as well. But the law is merely a suggestion in the world of Yellowstone. Take the 3rd episode of the same season, where Beth is arrested for assaulting a young woman who dared to make a pass at her husband by smashing a beer bottle over her head. When a bouncer puts her in a chokehold, Rip and all the other cowboys snap, leading to an epic bar brawl. Beth spends the night in jail, and when the young lady wishes to press charges, Jamie manages to get her to drop it, because apparently the young woman presented a threat when she made a joke about sleeping with Rip to Beth. So somehow, Beth is completely valid in her aggravated assault. She gets away with nothing but community service, which she doesn't even complete. These days, the judiciary isn't particularly powerful, and at the moment only certain people are being targeted by ICE. But the extension of such programs only follows this attitude of war, rule by a king and suspension of the judiciary because we are in a battle for survival. Somehow in the Wild West, people are always fighting over land, horses and cattle, but in the rest of the country there are other concerns. Of course, that doesn't matter now. Pitch a good story about gang members being everywhere, and it's just a free excuse for a tyrant to declare national emergencies and do whatever he feels is necessary. It's one thing to watch John Dutton and his kids go after interlopers on the ranch with full force, but when it translates to ordinary people across the nation, it's just a bit ridiculous. But as I said before, there is no rule of law in the land of Western vengeance, because we are not desperately clawing at each other for survival or something we want. It's hilarious in 1923, the obsession the villain Whitfield has over the Dutton ranch, and how it can only be solved by the end of a gun. In modern times, business people only come with sacks of cash. The whole idea that the Beck brothers, the villains of the 2nd season, or even Jamie's father, would act so violently as they do, but Jamie's father is a convict, and the Beck brothers, I believe, are white nationalists and criminals. I'm assuming that because when they kidnapped Tate, John's grandson, they sent him to stay with white nationalists. It just feels far-fetched that when things turn violent, the family dealt with it personally, rather than including law enforcement, as if they don't exist at all or are irrelevant. At that point, they chose to take revenge rather than seek justice, the murdering of everyone who is their enemy, the complete disregard for the system of courts and laws that make up our system. I think of these deportations that are happening right now, in which any immigrant who is here illegally can be taken. They are supposed to have criminal records, but apparently most of them don't. Most would argue that this is Western justice, aggressive and intense, but I call it vengeance, because it seems to demand retribution for the existence of the enemy. Due process forces us to think about who we are punishing and why. apply. Western vengeance just punishes indiscriminately. Laws, courts, systems that are powerful and have been in place for decades are dismissed as nonsense. Immigrants are invading and they are all criminals, because there are clear boundaries of right and wrong. Those who are here illegally are wrong. It doesn't matter if there are any mitigating circumstances or if they are here as refugees. There is no room for complexity or questions. There is right and wrong and nothing in between. Due process, laws, the criminal justice system, it's just nonsense in this world, and now in ours too. This obsession with punishment and the overall treatment of people in both the current administration and throughout the Yellowstone series speaks to a kind of BDSM mindset. If people are awful and worthy pretty much only of hatred, then they deserve only pain. It's common in right-wing conversations to use oppression as a kind of currency for gathering resources. It's a tactic of using pity to elicit empathy and resources from others. It's a dark tactic that capitalizes upon the dark parts of man's nature. There is a gross storyline in season 2 of 1923 where the villain Whitfield is keeping a sex worker as a pet or a slave or something. It feels like an unnecessary storyline, but I think it adds another layer of darkness and horror to this world. Not just a salacious, tacked-on, meaningless plot point as many people seem to think, and not just another way to make Whitfield seem like an extra bad guy who enjoys sadism in his personal life as well as in the way he's setting up his businesses in Montana. No, it seems like everyone in this world is either a sadist or a masochist and there's nothing in between. This world makes everyone into one or the other, and it seems the only difference between the protagonist and the antagonist is that it's better to be a masochist than a sadist. The Duttons and other characters hurt themselves in their choices to reject modernity in favor of endless animal freedoms, and the wealthy embrace sadism in the structures of the modern world, using them to hurt others. Everything feels like oppression porn. Look at how hard and for how long we all suffer, and how we keep surviving no matter what. Look at how hard we work for what we have. It feels like a racial method for garnering support for poor people who live with the land. Now, to be fair, rural communities are overlooked in many conversations of oppression, but this isn't a realistic portrait of suffering for anyone in America. This is a kind of suffering that feels over the top. This level of pain feels unreal, especially during peacetime. Go to a war zone if you want to understand suffering. Go to an anarchic, failed state. Is this the groundwork for American suffering down the line? A way to convince us that something we know is pointless, is somehow good, necessary, or inevitable? Yellowstone plays the oppression as currency card well, and it's resonating with people like Trump, who is buying into this concept that poor white people are somehow more oppressed than, say, refugees in danger from organizations like gangs or the Taliban. There were parts of the world going through much worse things at this time than the invention of a ski resort in the American West. These series make it seem like the worst tragedies in the world happened to these people. It's like a weird BDSM attitude towards reality. There is only pain, either self-inflicted or inflicted upon others, and that pain somehow gives validity to their land ownership, that they have earned what they have through horror. It's a very human way to think that we must earn what we have through pain and suffering, rather than just hard work and planning. But usually nothing material is gained or justified by virtue of pain. When John becomes the governor and signs the paperwork to end the Market Equities Development Project targeting the ranch, it feels like a full circle moment. The pain and suffering of the family was worth something, but those people are still gone. They didn't live to old age and enjoy the fruits of their labor. They suffered and struggled for something that isn't even financially viable. During his signing, John references the blood of his ancestors, and it reminds me of this quote: "Nothing ever ends poetically. It ends and we turn it into poetry. All that blood was never beautiful. It was just red." And it points to the fact that life simply happens and we give it meaning. It feels so certain that holding onto the land here is the most important thing, but it's just what the Duttons have given meaning. Pain, suffering, horror can be meaningful if we make them that way, but so can love, joy, and life. The universe doesn't work on that kind of barter system. Pains for success, that is a distinctly human trait. Some people work their whole lives and never see any of their desires realized. We don't need to prove ourselves to anyone. So I think claiming pain and struggle as justification for what one possesses is nonsensical. People in so-called third world countries will tell you that if you have something, you don't need to justify it. You should just be grateful. They use oppression as currency for gathering resources, so they will see anyone who cries oppression as doing the same thing, even if they are reasonable in doing so. Conversations about reparations, the pink tax, anything that dares to claim that differences or struggles of the past have had an impact on the present are automatically dismissed, because it's always assumed that this is the tactic at play. At one point, Elsa's voiceover in 1923 mentions that the people of Israel and Palestine have no clue what hell really is, that frozen wastelands, like Montana in the winter, are much worse than warm places could ever be. It seems arbitrary, but this is how oppression as currency games are played. The indignities that Sheridan's characters face are unnecessary and visceral in nature. No one would disagree with that. Sometimes, though, it feels like he's putting them through this horror for the express purpose of saying simply, this land is not for everyone. Resources, success, land, they are only for those who are willing to fight for them. You have to be assaulted multiple times, robbed, beaten, violated in every sense of the word before you earn the right to simply live. And this is something that seems to ring true across all of his programs, not just Yellowstone. It almost makes oppression into a necessity, and it's terrifying. Because it's about oppression as currency. It's about making these characters seem as beaten down as possible. Not to help ranching survive as a way of life or to make poor white people seem like the most oppressed minority living in the cold and horrors of Montana. No, all of this strange oppression is meant to make us hate our world as it is. Cities, governments, businesses, anything artificial or man-made is problematic. Everyone suffers here. There is no peace. And though nature brings just as many horrors, it has some beauty, and it's natural, so we can forgive it for at least a few moments. Because suffering is the only way to justify the things we have. The more horrors we endure, the more we can say we have earned what we desire. It's why the current administration has no problem putting us through the ringer. There is no reason for the cost of coffee or bananas to go up as much as it has. There is no benefit, but hardship is supposed to be a part of the package. It expands upon natural selection in social Darwinism. Only the fittest can survive, and they can't just be stronger than their fellow animals, they must also be able to take a ridiculous amount of suffering and punishment. We lionize horror in certain parts of America, making that supposed toughness into a badge of honor, so why should our elected representatives care? Ultimately, this is a world that is unlivable. There is no sense of normalcy here, and it's not just the TV shows, but in the whole of the right-wing version of reality, there is no life. There is only horror in every aspect of life. It's what's made the world so depressing and scary, skyrocketed mental illness and stress. Even people who aren't right-wing can feel this idea that we are all on our own, and if we should ask for help, we are the problem. It dovetails nicely with supply-side economics. Both that and cowboy culture were born in the 80s, or at least found their way into mainstream consciousness at the time. But now it's everywhere, and the loneliness, the horror, and the darkness are palpable to a place that is unrealistic, darker in our minds than in the real world. We worry about everything in the news. We worry about having to fight to live, and work harder and harder, and take on more stress, because we feel alone. But hopefully in the real world, we can still find kindness, happiness, and moments of joy. We make decisions every day to support our sanity and happiness. But as this ideology burrows rugged individualism, social Darwinism, and a whole lot of the darkness we've discussed today into our very beings, into every aspect of our world, cutting our governmental and social support, changing the fabric of liberal democracy, and gaslighting us to prevent complaints or protests, how do we cope? Well, the answer is we really don't. Take Spencer and Alex's love story in 1923. There are so many references to Titanic, the entire thing just feels like a ripoff and mashup of that and old Clark Gable films. But Titanic wasn't just a love story, it was a love story about loving life. Their story? Well, not so much. At first, it felt romantic and beautiful, like a throwback to the romantic dramas of Westerners and foreign lands, but truthfully, if you've watched older romance films of the past, this story just feels like a bad fanfiction version of those. Salacious, tacky, and unnecessarily cruel, Spencer and Alex's love story is like the dark version of the Titanic, which makes sense because James Cameron has left America. It's not about a woman finding her reason for living through love and the joy of existence. It's just pointless heartbreak and tragedy based in stupidity. And it's hard to see someone who is clearly educated and capable, though somewhat inexperienced, mess up so much. I feel such anger at this ripoff of the Titanic because it was such a beautiful film that helped people in difficult positions, and this version of reality, all it proves is that this world isn't worth living in. Nothing in our world is hopeful or uplifting anymore, and I'm sure someone would argue that seeing Alex make her own choices through everything, that seeing everyone make their own choices through everything is uplifting, but it's not. They are not her choices. They are made for her. It's just cruelty, pointless, unnecessary cruelty that paints our world, not even the past, as endless suffering. Titanic proved that the wealthy royal class of the past had no place in modern America, that life lived through democratic ideals of hard work, preparation, and joy in community and family is one worth living. This is the right wing's interpretation of it, and it is the antithesis of the Titanic film. Whether the world is purely animalistic, or if it is becoming this way because people are sick of corrupt systems exploiting us and they are allowing for destruction is up for discussion. But if the world is even remotely like this, nothing but pure darkness and horror with a few bits of joy sprinkled in, it's not worth it. If we are seeking endless freedom but also have no protection or security from others or the natural ups and downs of life, then what makes life worth living? There are some telling moments in Sheridan's shows, moments wherein many of his characters, faced with horrible circumstances, attempt to leave this world. And in each case, the person who is trying to help them off the ledge is unable to offer them anything substantive. When Jack talks Rose off from the ship's edge in Titanic, he does so by distracting her, as is the case with all the people in the Yellowstone universe. But then, he shows her a world beyond her shackles, one filled with joy, madness, opportunities in the future for work, love, and children, for a life that was more than just the bondage of being a rich man's wife. But in the Yellowstone universe, pulling people back from the brink and keeping them in this world is done badly. The only compelling thing that Spencer or John can offer men attempting to off themselves is the fear of their families missing them, or acknowledging the pain they went through. In the case of Kara and Emma, after Emma loses her husband in a shootout for the ranch, Kara can offer her nothing. Platitudes aren't useful in such situations. The whole selfishness, cowardice, and weakness thing is nonsense, and I couldn't see that working in real life. There is nothing substantive that reminds them why life is worth living, because in this world, a world of pure darkness and animalistic behavior, there isn't anything. For humans who have evolved beyond the base animal instincts, staying in a world that is filled with nothing but animals isn't worth it. In a world without safety nets, without community or security in the most basic sense, most people would opt out. There is no meaning in the horror of the assault of an unprotected man, or killing a reporter because you owe loyalty to your father and his huge ranch. There is no protection or security but that which you can barely secure for yourself, and even that is always under attack. So now, having fully understood all of the ideas behind Yellowstone and MAGA Republicans, we can now understand why our world is the way it is right now, and hopefully see why it is all so deeply wrong. Yellowstone is successful for the same reason that the right-wing movement is successful. They both seek to rewrite history and reality into their vision, and they succeed because they take the complexities of human existence and boil it down into something simple. It's a seductive world, which is why Yellowstone is so popular. Convenient, easy answers, comfortable black and white problems like keeping the kingdom or losing the kingdom, tribalism, easy good and evil, all liberalism is bad, villains who engage in BDSM and wax philosophical about it. The real world is rarely so simple or so comfortable. Sheridan's vision of the world, while compelling, is not a realistic one, which is what makes it fantastic storytelling. It draws us in with its black and white thinking, making the moral gray areas of modern life disappear. Most problems in this world can be solved with a gun, an attitude, or some simple legal document. It speaks to how people see the world, rather than challenging their conception of reality. It's perfect for the age of Instagram, where everything is clean and stylized, filled with pithy platitudes about man and nature, reducing us back to our animal selves, fighting to live. In the real world, we can't go and yell at our bosses or landlords. In real life, we can only dream of a world where we work for ourselves and own our homes outright, one that will never be based on the current trajectory of the world. Republicans and right-wing media do very similar tricks in their policies and speeches. Democrats are bad. Why? Well, I honestly don't know. I don't watch Republican media. But whatever their reasons, they are always rock solid and 100% certain. They must be, because why else would they fight so hard? It takes all of our very valid issues and concerns and boils them down to simple answers. There is a sense that the world is mostly black and white. You have to do what you have to do, and pure freedom gives you the ability to live that way. In reality, we cannot ship our enemies off to the train station. No good guy with a gun saves the day, and women are not protected against evil actors. Freedom comes with too many consequences, ones that only the ultra-strong can handle. None of us will ever be strong enough by ourselves, or even with just a few other people. The wolves attack sheep because they don't band together and protect themselves. And these clear boundaries of the world, not just around the ranch with its endless fences, but around modernity and tradition, who belongs in Montana and who doesn't, the ranch and nature, man and God. It's all meant to feel comfortable and safe. It also makes us pliable, because life isn't supposed to be certain, but when we feel that it is, there's a sense that we can trust and believe what we are being told. We feel safe and held. This is the ranch, and this is what the Duttons must do to move forward. It is rare that they should question their actions or be introspective about their choices. Any feeling that perhaps they should let the ranch go is met with the sense that they just can't, for historical reasons sometimes, but it's really not clear why at all. It's a feeling. Until we see 1883 and 1923, we don't really know why the land is so important, just that it is. It's all about the feeling of the place. And in the same way, Republicans will never be introspective about the actions that they're taking or question their decisions. The real problem with this kind of certain, simplistic thinking is that it is so comfortable, but our world isn't comfortable. In this way lies authoritarianism. At the end of the day, democracy is a process and authoritarianism is a period. Truth should make us uncomfortable, but whether we are exhausted from the constant questioning and discussion that is the backbone of our society, or if we just fall into capitalism's idea that everything should be easy and we should seek the easiest, laziest path forward, putting sensory comforts above all else, even moral good, we've just given up on democracy and complexity for easy answers. If you've ever watched propaganda, and I mean something that is blatantly propaganda, that's how it makes you feel. Safe, comforted. No one asks hard questions or is forced to think. There is no pursuit of the truth or reconciliation of complexities. There is rewriting of history and reality to fit neatly into complete narratives, to explain away troublesome things. In reality, America has always been liberal and complicated, filled with people from all around the world throughout the country. Even as far back as the 1800s, Chinese workers were helping to build the railroads, international students were coming here to study, and the law leaned towards helping people secure human rights. We created this country with the system that we have. That pesky little genocide that occurred when America was settled wasn't something that happened at the hands of the government and business like 1883 makes it seem. And there has always been this sense that America was practically empty when settlers arrived, but if the PBS documentary Native America is any indication, that just wasn't the case. But it's another way that these shows erase history. Yes, Native people were treated badly, but it was the church, government, and business. Ordinary people like the Duttons gave them sheep and helped them out. But is that true? History is so much more complex than that, and I'm sure there were ordinary people, even ranchers, who were kind to the natives and had a mutually beneficial relationship with them. But there were also people who didn't. There are many examples of historical erasure, shifting, little changes throughout all three series that help to prove Sheridan's points, like the fact that the German immigrants on the wagon train going west in 1883 would have been vaccinated because there was a vaccine mandate in Germany at the time and there was no controversy about it, or that trains already crisscrossed the nation. And it's not just about history, there's a great deal of rewriting reality in the right wing. I could go on, but it's not about truth or reality, it's about a feeling and winning. I worry that Sheridan has been, either knowingly or unknowingly, laying the groundwork for Trump's policies. The hardship and suffering that he's planning for, the destruction he has wrought to supposedly remedy systemic and structural failures, seem to have found their appearance first in the Yellowstone universe. Many prominent thinkers these days are looking at history and trying to understand what is happening. The 1890s was the last time we saw robber barons, much like the billionaires who were winners during the pandemic in 2021. And the same time, when the Yellowstone universe released the prequel 1883, which charted the Dutton origins, in 1923, we saw a time of intense technological progress, economic booms in the country, and downturns in places like Montana, with the rise of another class of rich folks, like the Great Gatsby. And it sort of charts with the time of 2023, when it came out, a time of massive inequality, economic booms for rich people, and suffering for the rest of us. So now, with the next prequel slated as 1944, a time of the US being bogged down in World War II, a time of rationing and suffering, a time regarded as some of the worst in recent American history, I can't help but feel that the groundwork is being laid for something awful in coming years. The problem is that for government-hating people, the 1940s was the time of Roosevelt, and a time of foundation building for the future. But this show will rewrite history to make it seem that the government at the time was evil. It seems ripe to make the assertion that if Roosevelt could abuse his power and take a third term due to the war, then why can't Trump? Based on the direction we are moving in right now, this doesn't feel impossible. Ultimately, history is complex. People are complex. And MAGA world's inability to understand that is extremely problematic. We have to embrace that uncertainty, the complexity, the fact that we don't know everything, and that's okay. I mentioned earlier that I don't agree with Beth Dutton on a lot of things, but I also admire how fiercely she fights for what she loves. That is embracing complexity. To understand that the world is complicated and no problem is solved by the tip of a spear is to admit that we don't know things. Yet, in much of our nation, there is an unwillingness to accept uncertainty as even a possibility. With the power of mass media, we are all targets, lambs to be slaughtered by the wealthy seeking power. Uncertainty, admitting that we don't know things, being open to possibilities, listening to those we don't understand or even like, creativity, finding our moral centers. These things could do more for us than yet another right-wing media outlet claiming to tell us the truth because they are outside of the system of mainstream media. We have lost the ability to believe in the complexity of humans. Now, probably thanks to social media, people are just one thing and that's it. We can't be a vegetarian one day and then eat bacon the next. We can't get mad at someone and then make a joke and we both laugh and like each other. We have to double down on every choice we make and be radicalized in one direction. Nothing else is allowed, and the people in our lives are usually the same way now. The same people who just a decade ago thought Trump was an idiot now kiss his ring, and people who voted for him the first time around in 2016 may have picked Obama less than a decade ago in 2008. That complexity is still possible, but we don't make room for it anymore. Pharma companies can be evil, but still produce products like vaccines and insulin that are immensely useful. The way in which we grow food with pesticides is problematic, but we also haven't had a famine in America in decades. Politicians are often self-serving idiots, but they can pass policies that are good because their opinion of themselves is often rooted in approval from others. Great artists can be monsters in how they treat others, but their art can still be beautiful. Good can exist with evil. That's how the world works. The whole series very much encompasses the idea that we are not good enough. We will never earn the things that we desire. Violence and suffering are the only pathways to what we want other than being strategic and cunning, and it reinforces the idea of humans as nothing more than animals. We must be islands because there is too much corruption and horror around us. In this world of scarcity and hardship, there is not enough for everyone, even if we have sympathy for those who are different from us. Individualism makes sense in this context, but the problem with the myth of the individual is that it devalues humans. Even worse, because society is truly terrible, in this world we must choose between freedom and safety, either choking to death on the binds of safety, which isn't always guaranteed, or suffering the terrible difficulties of freedom. But we can reject social Darwinism and accept the complexity of reality. We are more than just animals. We are complex, strange creatures living in a series of contrasting ideas, because if we accept only our animal essences as the truth of reality, then we will destroy ourselves, and it will be a choice that we make, no one else. I heard that song from the series Adolescence, Fragile, as covered by a children's choir. I didn't watch the series, I just heard the song. I had never heard it before, but I think it perfectly captures the problem with social Darwinism. If we choose to live by the idea that only the strong can survive and that dominance is the only method by which to accomplish things, we will kill each other and eventually ourselves. We are utterly fragile, as the song says, and in fragility, the weak disappear, and eventually everyone will disappear. There is no balance in that world, which is why we pioneered civilization, for all its problems. But such antiquated attitudes are destructive, which is why we see such a destructive world in Yellowstone. People die at a moment's notice and disappear without thought. Life is utterly meaningless in the Wild West. When people succumb to their baser instincts, act like animals, it might seem natural in this world, but it's not. It will destroy civilization, which is exactly what is happening right now. The inability of these people, of this world, and of modern Republicans to think rather than act, usually instinctively, is what is destroying our world. It's why the characters here live like they're on fire and burn out faster than they should. We're all dying in the minds of the right wing. That's the only thing that defines us. In their minds, this is completely natural and how it should be. Only a few strong white people should inherit the earth. They are the only ones who have earned it. We are fragile, not because destruction is the nature of reality, but because we do not see our own power. For anyone who has studied human culture, Sheridan's use of faux cultural anecdotes is infuriating. There is no rule of 500, the barter economy isn't how native populations were kept oppressed, and the use of natural or biological facts to push forward conservative ideology is ridiculous. We are powerful members of the natural world and universe at large. Man cannot be animal alone. It runs antithetical to our very evolution. The scene from 1923 where Alex and Spencer examine the footprint of the child, the one that Spencer believes is from ancient man, is truly interesting, because many right-wing people do not acknowledge evolution as fact. I wonder if it offended them to see how man's history extends beyond what the Bible claims, and that there is proof of it still available even to the naked eye in places like East Africa. Evolution is not a matter of question, it is a matter of fact. and scientists can track it and when we became a civilization. According to one of the most famous anthropologists, or someone who studies human culture and archaeology, Margaret Mead, one of the first signs of civilization is bones that show healed femurs, because the femur is the longest bone in the body, linking the hip to the knee. It takes time, which means someone had to care for that person. Someone had to stay with them and help them. In the law of the jungle, as Sheridan claims, there are no healed femurs. The first sign of civilization is compassion. Beyond just reading this as a quote out of a book, it is a fact that I have read anthropologists describe in detail over the years, that civilization developed to protect and care for the elderly, the weak, and children. It wasn't born out of man's desire for creature comforts or as a project by the rich and powerful, the most ruthless of us all. To claim that we are only animals is a lie because it discounts thousands of years of human evolution. Our world as it is would not exist if we were only animals. Our brains would not have gotten so much bigger. We wouldn't have eradicated disease or built cities or technology or, most importantly, government, laws, and rules and morals that have governed our world over the years and brought us to this moment. Keep this in mind. It's important because another tenet of this universe is the complete powerlessness of man in the face of nature and God. But here we are, making choices and changing things. It's a fundamental dissonance that we are both powerless in our own lives, but must rely solely on ourselves. But there are plenty of them throughout the series. If you spot them, then you begin to question these supposedly naturalistic ideas. Nature is a part of us, and we are a part of it. The decisions we make are born of the free will that God gave us. To throw it away and let nature take its course is sacrilege.
I think heaven's right here. So's hell. One person can be walking the clouds right next to someone enduring eternal damnation, and God is the land.
If this world is all that there is, as Yellowstone often claims, then we have a responsibility to make this world a better place. And by virtue of the fact that there is no world beyond this one, we have all the agency and power to make changes right here. We shape this world. Take, for example, ranching. The main issue in the series is how the land in Montana will be used. What will Montana look like in 100 years? Ranching is seen as the most natural state of human intrusion on nature, but it's just as artificial as farming, and while necessary to human life, it's one part of our world, not everything. It is a fundamental intrusion of man on nature, and it asserts that we have power over nature and dominance, but Yellowstone makes it seem natural. Just a man, his horses and cattle, and the open land. But it was something that we invented. The real problem here is that as long as we believe that to be true, believe ourselves to be nothing more than animals, believe that humanity is awful and doomed, and that the earth is just as evil as us, and there is no right or wrong, only survival, then the rich will use that as an excuse to break our world in half, which is exactly what is happening. Society is falling apart because we have allowed the wealthy, using things like Fox News, to convince us that our world is beyond repair. And if, no matter what, the people of Yellowstone are destined for doom, then so are we. We don't deserve to exist. Nothing does except those who are strong enough. And even those people are morally reprehensible, like the Duttons. The whole project of reality is just madness. There's nothing else but animals with higher developed sensibilities to know that they are wrong, but don't care when they are. If we didn't have morals, we wouldn't think we were wrong. We wouldn't go to war to keep something like a ranch, or have a legacy with children. We would just fight as much as we could and accept the rest. We are, by nature, more developed than Sheridan claims. To believe that we are more than animals and more than social Darwinism is to believe in ourselves and the joy of life. We can believe in our intelligence and abilities, our gifts from God. The irony of Taylor Sheridan's work is this obsession with pointing out only the broken parts of the system, not the useful parts that help us. It is foolish to think only in one way, the same way that ultra-liberal movements and political ideologies often claim that life could be utopian and perfect through systems and institutions like the government. Ultra-right-wing ideologies believe that there is nothing we can do in the face of nature, fate, or destiny. One believes that we have all the power, and the other believes we have none of it. The fact of reality is somewhere in between, but people don't seem to like that fact. Alex's journey was something like this too, but she always seemed to choose foolishness and freedom, leaving things up to fate rather than planning and thinking or listening to advice. The cerebral is not evil, though Sheridan and many others seem to think that it is. Alex's ending is what really makes this point for me. The necessity of planning and preparation, of listening to those smarter than ourselves, like those who survived the wagon train in 1883 did. The importance of using one's higher mind, because otherwise there is no dignity in life. The only dignity left is in choosing one's pain and hardship, death after immense hardship, or continued hardship but a life with the man you love. It is all absolute nonsense because much hardship can be avoided. There are a million places in all of this where Spencer and Alex could have avoided calamity by not being stupid, taking different trains, staying away from her ex-fiancé, choosing to take a train and being escorted by the wealthy couple instead of driving. No one is this dumb in real life, and most hardships in the developed Western world can be avoided because we built systems and institutions that can help. This feeling that the world is endlessly corrupt and irredeemable is a dangerous feeling that is being manipulated by those who are monstrous wolves. They have succeeded in convincing us that the government and business and medicine and any organization without a face is corrupt. They prey on our stress, creating the problem through supply-side economics and then offering us the solution by gutting the few safeguards that were left to stop them from completely swallowing our world whole. Meanwhile, convincing us that this destruction will be beneficial in the long term. The problem with claiming all systems are broken by virtue of being systems is that we live our lives in them no matter what. So if we ban vaccines because medical systems can often be problematic, we push people into dying early. Reforms make more sense than outright destruction. It's like remodeling an old kitchen. It's necessary, but nowadays it's become absurdly pricey for subpar materials. The logical thing would be to work with what is already there and reform the problems. It makes more sense when faced with something outdated and broken to think about how to repair it in the most fundamental ways. If you've ever watched home makeover and organization videos or TV shows, they always talk about starting with what you have and working slowly to fix things in the right fashion. Something that can also be applied to government and business, something that has been done and worked before in American history. Destruction isn't the answer, transformation is, and that happens slowly through small changes and consistent efforts, not sweeping legislation that breaks apart everything. Logically, we should always be thinking about how to work with what is already there and improve it. In the same way, we should be adding oversight to broken systems, expanding upon what works and cleaning out what doesn't. Regulating businesses like health insurance companies, making our primary value that of caring for human life. But most people, when it comes to their kitchen or their country, would rather throw out anything useful with anything broken and start from scratch. It doesn't address any of the issues of the past that will pop up again in the future. But boy, does it feel good to smash stuff. Systems allow us to do more than just be swept away by unseen forces. That is their benefit, but most people don't seem to see it that way. We all know that systems can fail us. Middle America has seen the brunt of it in recent years, the way in which small towns have been hollowed out economically and subject to hardships. But to stand against problematic systems while noble is irrelevant in fixing anything. It won't bring back jobs to empty towns or bring back the prosperity of the past. You have to stand for something, not just against government or corporations. Yellowstone and right-wing ideologies can't offer us anything new about the state of humanity. The only difference between this and TV shows that get labeled woke is that this offers a comforting world rather than just pointing out inequities. Because whether we like it or not, our world is run by systems. It always will be. Even before modern times, there were institutions that kept the world running. Kings, taxes, laws, military, business, in different forms, but still recognizable. We can't go back to an anarcho-primitivist world, no matter how much easier it feels. And systems can be navigated successfully. As I said before, it's a bit strange to think that Alex could go through Ellis Island and not get clocked for her privilege and wealthy background immediately. I've seen it happen in real life, so this just feels like straight up propaganda. There are quite a few moments like that in the series, places where the system feels like it would be easy to manage but is painted as being dramatically more intense than it is. Like, why would a visit from the president to the local native reservation result in all of the stray dogs in town being shot by his security? It doesn't make any sense, but it's not supposed to. It's propaganda to make us feel that because it's the president, he's evil. All structural bodies, from government to business, are seen as being problematic in this world. The real problem is that no man is an island, and the sooner we accept that in life, the better off we are. If we believe that we are in it alone, we believe that we must always fight like animals just for peace of mind. And I don't think that's true. The beauty of the Western world is that rationality is possible. The people of Yellowstone believe, much like many many others that their way of life will die out. But it is more than possible to keep it alive with a few changes. Keeping ranching alive is possible. There are environmentally sound forms of both ranching and farming that can also prioritize justice for the workers. A better government focused on real regulations could break up large entities like market equities and other monopolies that have become legal over the years. It's not a pipe dream, and if we work with those who we believe to be our enemy, the world is not so black and white. Life is about loss, but we can either look to the future to create something new or keep mourning for what is lost. Yellowstone chooses to do the latter rather than the former. Of course, in a world of pure darkness, how could anyone have values? Our opinion of the world is a revelation of our character, and those who pick Trump see the world as a dark place. No one here has any kindness or decency inside of them. How could they? We see ourselves in the world around us, and if we are not good, we assume others aren't either. If we cheat on our taxes, we assume others must as well. I recently explained to someone how I feel grateful for taxes because despite the waste and issues of the government, I had visited places in the world that didn't have taxes like we do. Places without public parks or libraries or even trash collection, without the things we take for granted. Because I know what a world without public services is like, how evil and exploitative it truly can be, more than most Americans can understand. If you walk away from this video with nothing else, then please absorb this. Government serves a function. Our world, as it is now, is not as bad as it feels. If you'd like to know what a world without public services, government, or taxes looks like, just look up the conditions in any place like Yemen or Somalia or any other failed state in the world. Believe it or not, there are struggles to the world that don't involve destruction, bootstrapping, and struggle. If we can reject our tribalism, drop our egos, and think from calm, rational minds, there is more hope available now than ever before. I say that there is good left in the world because there is complexity. It's not some naive ideology, it's a fact of reality. Humans will behave in a variety of ways based on a variety of factors. This self-flagellation about the horrid nature of humanity, of only evil actors in the world, it's no better than the BDSM storyline of Whitfield in 1923. We can flog ourselves endlessly about how awful people are, or we can step up and be better people. I'm just not sure why the only answer seems to be to succumb to the madness and become like the world already is rather than changing it. So when progressive people come to the forefront and tell us that we can change things, that the government isn't evil, or that there is hope, we must automatically be skeptical of them. I talked about this earlier, the idea that all left-wing people must be hypocrites. To accept darkness means to believe that there is no light in the world. To assume that all people who try to be good are evil liars and hypocrites is dangerous for that reason. It keeps ordinary people pessimistic and apathetic at best and enraged at worst. I remember later in that conversation I had with the cancer survivor years ago, I mentioned AOC and her push for organizing people against problematic policies, and they were surprised to hear that she did not engage in insider trading and had pushed legislation against it, or that Maxwell Frost, the 25-year-old elected to Congress a few years back, had to couch surf until he could afford an apartment because he had no credit. Perhaps there are progressively minded politicians who are corrupt or less than perfect somehow. As someone who is willing to embrace uncertainty, I'm open to that possibility. But I also see how useful, decent people can exist within broken systems, that I can love a TV show because it helped me through a hard time, but I can also dislike it because it encourages ideas that are dangerous to the society I live in. Complexity means embracing opposing ideas, seeing that they can exist all at once. The funny thing about all of this is that the University of Yellowstone does not espouse any political ideas directly. It hates all politics, political institutions, and politicians. It believes that all things political serve only those who are corrupt from the inside out, like Jamie. But the ideology of destruction, of hatred for all things modern, urban, institutional, this ideology is now the mantle of modern republicanism. There is a deep need to burn down the world as we know it in hopes of building something better down the line, even if that's not the intent of the leaders who are using these ideas. None of what is happening is probably what Taylor Sheridan intended. To have these posers in government, a part of the system, these rich dingoes acting like they are rebels within it, it's just madness. They perform and posture like peacocks, creating a world that is compatible with their constituents' idea of the world to get what they want. His original message was that through grit and hard work, we can reclaim our own dignity as people in the globalized world, which robs us of meaning, legacy, ancestry, joy, by overcoming hardship. But at some point, accepting hardship as the only nature of reality makes us into masochists. There is no joy in overcoming it anymore, because the struggle is more important than anything else. It's too much for us to ever overcome come truly. So we wallow and we trudge on instead of seeing our power and our potential partnership with the world. And while these ideologies feel so separated from the structures of government and business, all the big baddies that the Yellowstone universe vilifies in favor of personal freedom, these ideas are exactly what the corporate elite want us to believe. If we believe that we are all alone, and that any sort of safety net from the government or nonprofits or any other entity is restricting our freedoms, then they are free to swoop in and steal everything we hold dear, which is exactly what they have been doing since the 1980s, when Reagan began passing policies to destroy the liberal consensus that Letters from an American often talks about. I've explained what that is in a link in my description below. Supply-side economics devalues us the same way that individualism, social Darwinism, and all the other ideologies we've discussed here do as well. And if the sheep are fighting each other and breaking down the fence that is supposed to protect them, then the wolves are free to take their time and pick everyone apart. But what makes most of Yellowstone's philosophy so dangerous isn't so much politics, but the idea that we are helpless. The specific idea that humanity is helpless because we are so selfish that our only power and agency lies in our personal decisions. And even then, in recent years, it seems like the choices we make are only in response to horrible things in the world, not our desires or personal values developed over our lives. No, humans are just passing through, incapable of helping ourselves, each other, or even the world. Something that has been patently untrue since our inception, and even more false in modern times. We are not stupid, we are not animals, and we are not doomed to forces beyond our control. The spread of the culture of the Wild West is now dangerous because rather than being about ranching or the lifestyle of the cowboy or living with the land, it's a dog whistle for lawlessness, rugged individualism, and anarchy. It's about a world that is anti-government, survival of the fittest, and a war for everything, even existence. And if you're thinking, well, I don't care for the lawless West, I'll just stay in my nice suburban home, I'm right there with you. But these ideas are invading every facet of our lives. It's why we now have what is basically a self-proclaimed king of the jungle, running the country. Someone who enjoys survival of the fittest because he is the strongest, and by that I mean the most cutthroat, ruthless, and immoral person. And our elected representatives are merely his advisors, completely unaccountable to us. Our world has become and will continue to become increasingly expensive and strange. Ultimately, the very principles that the MAGA movement holds dear are the ones that will destroy it, because the simple fact is, no one wants this. It's all great in theory, but in practice it's not practical or realistic to the complexity of human nature. Humanity has spent years cramming itself into ideologies, political, social, religious, but this one especially runs against human nature. The problems that modern right-wingers are railing against are real. I'm not going to gaslight anybody here. I'm sure that my criticism of the methods the current administration has been using might minimize the issues that brought us to this place, but that is not my intent. We have ended up in this place due to a variety of reasons. But issues of immigration, economy, corruption, corporate greed, they are all real. The problem here is that there are no easy answers or solutions. These are the ideas that rich folks are using to manipulate our world into the one that they desire. They are using a critical juncture in our country's history to destroy the whole of our world. They like the simple nature of these ideas because they can use them to get what they want. It reminds me a bit of Vecna from Stranger Things. To truly understand and make changes in America, we must look at things differently. I've mentioned before that we must think of destruction not as an ending, but as an opportunity for transformation. We must think of this moment, of all of the problems of America right now, as a state of change, just as death. For when we die, we are not just disappearing from this state, we are moving into another one. It's a healthier perspective to think of death in such a fashion, one that encourages us to live life with purpose. In the same way, to think of America transforming from this form into another is a healthier perspective than to think of it dying. To do this, we must think of another TV show, Netflix's Stranger Things, which began in 2016, which was kind of the trigger point for everything that is happening right now. Stranger Things also captures this moment in time, but in a different fashion. There are no easy answers in that universe. It's sort of a liberal version of Yellowstone. It plays on established characters, simple concepts, nostalgia for a simpler world, old settings and ideas in a new way, capturing how America has become strange and unfamiliar, in some cases for the worst and in other cases for the better. It is all about the deep psychological and emotional labor required on an individual and social level to achieve true transformation rather than destruction. The most important difference between these two series is the perception of free will. Yellowstone and the ideas of MAGA have robbed us of free will, the sense that we have a say in our world. We have a choice, the choice to either see death as an ending and choose to rail against it and hold on ever more tightly, or to see death and change as transformation and explore them with curiosity, openness, and potential. Whether we like it or not, change is coming for all of America, but that doesn't have to be a bad thing. It's all in one's perspective. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this had the intended impact in making you see things differently. If you made it all the way to the end of this dense, painful video, then I applaud your intellectual vigor, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!